All right, here we are again working on some more Homelab stuff. So a couple of things I want to summarize before we get into it. So first of all, a few of you were missed out on whether HA proxy or kube-vip won. So let me first of all talk about that before we get going too much more. So these things are summarized in this very hard to find GitHub page, which is not allowed on the certification exam, ironically, but is linked from the official documentation. And this is for HA availability. So if you don't know what HA is, H is so that if something goes, you have three of a thing, and then if one of the thing, three or five of a thing, and then if one of the things goes down, then you have the other things around. And we're setting up HA. Most people won't want this at home, but I do, because it's a good way to model how to do this. As want to just repeat again, my entire decision-making process for what I pick is picking technology for my imaginary company of elite machine learning people in a think tank who are underfunded and who have to pick things that are not Red Hat, for example. So based on those criteria, we have HA. So and then for HA, you have a few options. You obviously have the hardware stuff, which is not an option. F5 is the one everybody was talking about, which is this very expensive hardware-based load balancer. And I don't remember what layer. People like to refer to the layers for the load balancers using, the 7 layers of network layering, and that's just going to confuse most people. But also, I'll describe it in general terms. So if you use like a hardware layer, then the hardware detects automatically if one of your machines or one of your in this case, your IP numbers answering on 6443, that's the API for Kubernetes. If it stops behaving, it's like, okay, we're not going to give you that ARP address, or we're going to send you to something else. So it navigates the traffic. To be fair, it doesn't have anything to do with ARP address. It gives you a connection. It proxies the connection to the other thing. And I think at that layer, actually, there's nothing to do with ARP. But so that's one of the type. And we're not using that because we don't have that kind of money. So we're using one of the software options, kube-vip and HA proxy, which yesterday I learned is independent of Kubernetes. It can be used for anything. People proxy all kinds of stuff using this. It's actually really intelligent, and it does the same thing. It checks to see if stuff is open, but instead of and then it hands off it resolves the IP number, the virtual. All of this is to give you a virtual IP. That means you get one number for all of your stuff, your redundant stuff, and then that one number gets distributed. The traffic on it gets distributed properly. That's what load balancing is. No matter what Network Chuck says about load balancing, which is totally wrong, by the way, it's all reverse proxy on Network Chuck. In that video about load balancing, it's totally wrong. And so that's what load balancing is. It distributes the load across multiple IPs. And Nginx, people like Nginx too. It's another one. kube-vip and HA proxy is recommended. So kube-vip proxy and HA proxy are kube-vip and HA proxy are, from the research we've done over the last week, the preferred solution because it's the most mature. Now I'm going to amend that in a bit when we talk about kube-vip, and then I'll tell you how we came to the conclusion to probably keep kube-vip. Thank you for the follow, Nate. So kube-vip and HA proxy they've been around for a very long time. They're very trusted. They are none of this stuff is on the certification exam, according to 2 people who took the test. This HA stuff, none of it's on the CKA. So if that's the thing you're going for, which I highly suggest you don't waste your money, but I spend that money making yourself a cluster instead of taking those stupid tests. That's my official recommendation at this point. Because how are you can't practice HA. You can get a certification, not even know HA. How are you certified to be a Kubernetes administrator in an on-prem environment without that? The certification is not even worth the paper it's printed on. So anyway, this is the way to go. It's the most mature. It's the one that's covered by the Kubernetes documentation and et cetera, et cetera. Can we please not talk about Rust and Wayland right now? I really don't want to talk about that. Also, we're streaming about other stuff. And so, and then enter the new kid on the block, right? Which we had some people in the chat who recommended this, thankfully, and kube-vip. So it's important to mention that kubeadm and HAProxy run primarily as independent system services, daemons, whatever you want to call them, managed by systemd. And so they are 100% independent from Kubernetes. You can point them at Kubernetes, you can point them at anything, right? And that's actually an advantage for many people, including me. I mean, to deploy it, you would probably set up an Ansible rule, or playbook, which people have done, and they've shared that with me. And there's kind of a healthy debate in the community here the other day. Sometimes I got a little bit, angry because of all the stuff I was figuring out. Hey, Captain Mythic, what a name. And then, enter the new kid on the block, kube-vip, which is not really new. It's been around since like 2021, and you can go find the links and everything to it. And it runs as a static pod, which is a pod that runs that is set up and managed by manifest files for the local kubelet on a node, in this case, a control node. And it's kind of confusing, and I really ranted about this the other day because you can't test it until the kubelet is running, and by default, when you first install the kubelet, it's in a crash loop state, so there's nothing to test. So you still have to assume it's going to work, which it did, and then do your kubeadm, -- client, whatever, and then you can test it using netcat or whatever you want. In fact, or curl, actually. We ended up testing using curl, which is another reason. The documentation that tells you how to test your high availability load balancing is total bullshit. It's totally bad. In fact, it's set up for a little bit later. Yeah, we're doing a video right now. So, if everybody's just coming here, if you really want to follow along, go to github.com rbxrob/homelab, and that'll you can catch up by reading that. I can't really tell you what's up. You can go read that, please, and then I'm happy to fill you in. So kube-vip, which stands for virtual IP, is something that's developed entirely in Go that uses the ARP layer, ARP or BGP, which these are two networking protocols that are underneath IP resolution, and I'm not going to get into what that means, and they have to all be on the same subnet, of course, on the local LAN, relative to each other. And when it's up, when any computer trying to go access that virtual IP, the ARP answer comes back and says, oh, you want this guy, or you want this guy, or you want this guy. And so you get that. Now, I am not sure if it's going to actually equally distribute the load across all of 3 control planes. I'm told that it will, but I don't know that it's not going to cache it and it's just going to go to the one first and all the time, every time. And we won't know that until we get into this a little bit deeper. So, but this is the one I ended up going with. It's a new kid on the block. It was actually invented. It was a Skunkworks project. We understand from somebody who's a friend of the person who made it. kube-vip started as a Skunkworks project. It means people were doing it behind the scenes at VMware as a part of Tanzu. Of course, people know that the original creator of Kubernetes worked at VMware for a while. Doesn't anymore. He retired when VMware got purchased by Broadcom, which has got everybody really worried. But nonetheless, that's where it came from. So it's relatively new. People haven't heard of it. And I was really annoyed by it yesterday because I couldn't test it because it requires kubelet to be running in order to test, because it's a static pod. Static pods can't do anything without a kubelet. But there's a lot of other things that are static pods, by the way. They're not bad. I finally understand, and I'm going to put that here. finally understand scope and reason for static pods. I mean, I've only learned about static pods for the first time the other day. And I now, after going through this installation, I fully comprehend their use and purpose and scope. They can actually do network queries. They just can only do network queries on the host network. If you know anything about container stuff, the host network, the host networking scope is a part of the container runtime. And so they can actually talk, and they can. In fact, we tested it, and we were able to get it to talk to the API, even though it doesn't have a container networking interface defined, which we're going to do today. So we went with kubeadm. If you want to read, so to kind of recount the story of flip-flopping back between HA and VIP. So when I first read the thing saying that I couldn't test a static pod without a kubelet running, I was super annoyed with that because I was so draconian about going down the steps and saying, hey, I can't test the load balancer. I need to test that before I actually enable the kubelet by running kubeadm. And, kind of a chicken and the egg thing. Been the test a couple of days ago, really. Whole different view of VMware Kubernetes push. Oh, I would love to hear it, yeah. So, that kind of annoyed me. It annoyed me enough to really seriously look at HA Proxy plus LBG and others that I really respect use HA Proxy and keep alive. Somebody else reported they use HA Proxy and keep alive in their school project that had nothing to do with Kubernetes, which I thought was cool. So not having the dependency on Kubernetes to me was kind of a thing. And so I went through it, and then I read through all this stuff again. Again, the reason, just a reminder, the whole reason we're doing this is so you have a value, a reasonable value that you can pass to -- control plane endpoint when you run kubeadm init, which is really critical because it says it here. If you don't have that, you won't have HA, and you can't add it later. You have to do it when you run init. In the case of using some kube-vip, you just have to trust that it's going to be there without testing it because of the weird dependency. But, and so I went through and I read keep alive DNHA proxy, and I was like really interested in this. And then I got to this. I got to the configuration stuff. It says, hey, you can run it. You can run it by itself. And then I read this. The combination can be run either as the services and operating system, or as static pods on the control plane hosts. So this is the people writing about HA and keep alive, and then it says the service configuration is identical in both ways. And it's been around for a long time. It's well tested. And then I kept reading on, and I was like, okay. Oh, I was like, look at all this configuration I'm gonna have to do. HA proxy configuration, and then it goes down and says run it as a service on the operating system, and then they have this, and this is what really convinced me to drop it, believe it or not. If keep alive DNHA proxy will be running on the control plane nodes, they can be configured to run as static pods. All that is necessary here is placing respective manifest files in the directory, bootstrapping the cluster. During the bootstrap process, kubelet will bring up processes so that the cluster can use them while starting. This is an elegant solution, in particular with the setup described under a stacked control plane at etcd nodes. So we are using a stacked control plane. We talked about that excruciatingly long yesterday. But the fact that the people advocating for HA are saying static pods are an elegant solution really gave me pause. It was like, okay, so they're, internally they're saying, hey, this static pods are a good thing. You want to do them. So I started to look at static pods again and this whole, initialization loop dependency problem. And I kind of like, okay, it's not a big a deal. To many people's, happy cheers. They're like, just get over it. And this is how you would do it. But I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well use this one. As an alternative to the more traditional approach, kube-vip implements both management of a virtual IP and load balancing in one service. So the kube-vip, and this is probably the two biggest reasons that I stayed with kube-vip after going through this flip-flop. kube-vip not only gives you a virtual IP, all right, which is static pod, just like they're suggesting is elegant in the HA way. But it also fulfills the internal load balancer piece. And if you're building on-prem, we haven't got there yet, but so there's an internal load balancer piece that usually is fulfilled by MetalLB or something. And kube-vip fills both of those roles. It sets up a virtual IP for you, and it fulfills the load balancer type internally to the whole entire cluster that is normally not fulfilled unless you add a plugin to do that. And usually it's MetalLB these days. So kube-vip actually does both of those. So you get the bonus of both of them. And to me, that's the thing that kind of tipped the scales. If I'm okay with static pods, then a point-by-point comparison between kube-vip and HA proxy is going to lean towards kube-vip because you get more bang for the buck. Because now I get an internal load balancer fulfilled, and it's simpler, right? And I also get a virtual IP as an inbound thing without the high expense of a hardware load balancer. To me, that was enough to make. The only advantage to using HA proxy would be if you wanted your skills with reverse proxies to apply externally outside of Kubernetes. If I were to deploy HA proxy, I would do it because I don't want static pods. I would do it because I want something that's very, very independent, that has to be independently managed. If you have an infrastructure team and a Kubernetes team business model, which we have at work, then that management of that load balancer would fall under the infrastructure team and not the Kubernetes team. Even though those two, the model for doing that is getting meshed together by things like Cluster API and stuff like that I'm still on the fence about even doing. I'm going to experiment with it, but I still feel like it's too edgy out there, because then you're managing your infrastructure with Kubernetes as opposed to having them independent. So that is the really kind of fast overview of the decisions I made up to this point. And we did all of this. We actually set up rules for all these kube-vip things. You get spoiled in cloud. Built-in LB. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, cloud. That's why I suggest strongly to anybody who wants to call themselves a administrator, Kubernetes administrator, that they get the fuck off cloud. Cloud will hurt you in most of the jobs that are paying for you to be a Kubernetes administrator are paying you to have cloud skills, but they're paying you to be able to manage on-prem Kubernetes installations as well, if not primarily. And you cannot practice those things in the cloud. This is a perfect example of that. And people will say, oh, load balancing, inbound load balancing has nothing to do with the scope of Kubernetes. I'm like, okay, but that's why they ask for an infrastructure engineer who has Kubernetes experience instead of just a Kubernetes person. So I'm going to maintain that position. I feel strongly that making this belabored decision to use kube-vip over HA proxy and being able to talk about it intelligently, which nobody who got trained on cloud or even has a CKA can even talk about. They're like, what is it? What's VIP? We had people on the stream running Kubernetes clusters like, man, I never heard of it. What the hell? Because they got a CKA and they never set up their own internal infrastructure ever. So it's been painful and it's been ranty, and there's been a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears going through this, but it's been very educational and it's been worth every second of it as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so now we have another choice to make. We need to pick Calico over Cilium. Now, yesterday or a day or two ago, I made the decision already to use Calico. I know Calico. So we have to talk about this. Okay, so this is also something that you will never hear in this. It's not on the CKA. And it's not something that you decide in the cloud. The cloud has already made the choice about what CNI to use. In fact, if it's Google, you Google GCP, they use Cilium. And we're going to talk about why. But in order to make a choice about what cloud networking interface to use, you have to have infrastructure and a certain amount of networking knowledge. You can't even pick without that because you don't have any basis for conversation. Let me tell you why. So let's go out to the blog about this. All right. So first of all, where does this come from, right? So if you're, doing the evaluation of these things, whether for your home lab or for your business, you'd have to go and say, okay, well, what I mean, there's so many things here that you have to pick. You have to choose, like pick from one of the 15,000 options here. And you have service meshes, all this stuff. We're going to be doing all of this stuff. Storage, we haven't even got there. Runtime containers, which we did. We went with Creo instead of Containerd. And then you have the cloud native networking. Okay, so this is where we are. The cloud platform we build at work will spoil users. Not to forget Splunk integrations. Yeah, I know. It's funny you mentioned all those things. Do you use Kyverno over Gatekeeper, OPA? We need to talk. We need to talk about Kyverno over OPA, because I'm actually thinking of suggesting we move to Kyverno over there. But that's a different thing. So when you build on-prem clusters, you have to make a ton of decisions. Half of this stuff, I'm a big OPA fan. I'm kind of on the fence with both, but we are definitely OPA shop. So if you're just watching this as a spectator, you have to make tons of huge decisions about the pieces of your Kubernetes on-prem deployment, the pieces, what go on to it, and then once you get Kubernetes running, that's just half the battle. Now you have to pick all of the Kubernetes applications that you're going to support for your end users, like Argo CD for kind of CI/CD building, as well, or in addition to all these other things, Tecton, Grafana, Fluentd, Elasticsearch, Jupyter Hub, which I set up, a Jaeger policies for who can install and what. That's OPA and Kyverno. There's backup storage. There's just like this. So just getting Kubernetes in is just like the beginning. There's like all of these other things, and I've learned a bit of patching it and deploying AWX. And Kate's which uses Kyverno. AWX and Kate's uses Kyverno. Interesting. Did not know that. Every choice to be based on clear requirements and the expectations we have from the system. That would be a really great idea. The problem is that some of these things are exactly identical. Okay, so and let's talk about the decision at hand. Which cloud native storage? So believe it or not, when you set up an on-prem cluster, Kubernetes cluster, you have no networking. By default. It's really funny. You talk about batteries not included. So I go through all of the steps for installing Kubernetes. Which is supposed to be this big, wonderful way of networking together all these microservices and everything, right? And out of the box, it has no networking whatsoever. That just doesn't work. I still think that's funny. I know it's horrible, but I think it's funny. And the reason it doesn't have any is because, these days, the Kubernetes project is like, well, there's a lot of ways to implement networking in Kubernetes, and how dare we say what you should do? So they created a project called CNI, which stands for the I think it's a container network. Is it cloud network interface or is it container network interface? I think it's container, right? Because it's about containers. It's what allows the containers to talk to each other, and it's pretty involved. It's pretty complicated. So Kubernetes decided, hey, we're going to define how the networking must work, and you implement it, and we don't care how you implement it, as long as you do it. So it's like a driver. We talked about this yesterday. So if you consider Kubernetes a distro or a Linux distro, kind of like Kubernetes is kind of like systemd. I mean, let's be real. Kubernetes almost has a direct parallel to systemd, and CNI would be kind of a driver or within that, and then all of the services that are running all the time are kind of equivalent to the applications that are being installed into Kubernetes or running processes and that kind of thing. And there's kind of a direct. So you really just have to pick a network driver. That's really what this is about. It's what it feels like anyway. So you have the CNI, systemd with orchestration and containers, and so CNIs don't even support security policies. I didn't even know about that one. So we have to make a decision. Well, in order to even make that decision, we have to read about it, right? And there's a great blog here that I found that talks about the differences between Calico and Cilium. Calico got everything started. Taniwha was actually sharing a lot of really great information. NSX is great too. People have been talking about this a lot. So, and I'm considering strongly moving to Cilium, even though I've been using Calico. Most people have been using Calico for years. That was one of the first ones. In fact, I think the networking model for Kubernetes was based originally on Calico, which they gifted to open source. So Calico has been really front and center in this whole thing. And Cilium, however, is the new kid on the block. And so before we get too far deeply into this, Cilium requires a very, very recent Linux kernel, because Cilium is entirely built on a technology called eBPF. And if you don't know what eBPF is, it's kind of cool and hard to describe. Let me see if I can find it for you. For full support, yeah. eBPF is kind of the new way. It's hard to explain, but in a nutshell, it allows user land or application land access to otherwise internal kernel information. They call them user land and I think it's kernel land, right? And so eBPF is a revolutionary technology with origins in Linux kernel that can run sandbox programs in it. They're sandbox, of course, they'd have to be. I mean, there's a lot of focus on how to break out of the sandbox and get root access using eBPF, which we all knew there would be. It is used to safely and efficiently extend the capabilities of the kernel without requiring the kernel to change source code or to load kernel modules. Now, this is actually one of the interesting places that Rust is playing as well, because people are writing Rust eBPF projects that are interfacing with the kernel without becoming a part of the kernel. And this whole idea that the kernel is going to be rewritten in Rust is a lie. I don't want to get into that. It's a lie. If anybody tells you that the Linux kernel is being rewritten in Rust, they're telling you wrong. The Rust is being potentially allowed to write drivers, mod probe kinds of things that can run in the kernel. The kernel is not being rewritten in Rust. Okay? So I just want to put that out there. And one of the things that somebody might want to do, you don't even need a kernel module to do eBPF. That's what's so cool. So Calico moved to eBPF now. Really? Huh. We'll have to go read about that. Yeah. So it's really a choice of API and features now at this point. I did not know Calico moved to eBPF. I know Calico. That's a no-brainer. I'm going to use Calico, obviously. You just helped me make the decision. Thank you for that. Because, I mean, I know it. It's the thing I've installed right before. So, I mean, it's tough because, everybody says, hey, you should have all the considerations when you make a decision. Well, some of this stuff is really low level. Like, okay, if they, which one uses eBPF? XDP is also nice tech for networking, yes. It is used to safely and effectively extend the capabilities of the kernel. Historically, the operating system has been an ideal place to implement observability, security, and network functionality due to the kernel's privileged ability to oversee it. So, they are actually changing network behavior by using eBPF, right? And it's a real groundbreaking technology. It's really going to revolutionize a lot because there's a bunch of software that's already emerged that can do things, rearranging network traffic or observing network traffic, stuff that normally would have to have kernel privileges. And this, like they say, this is really, really changing everything. In fact, I don't think it would even be worth it to use anything that doesn't use eBPF at this point because it's so revolutionary. It's been around for a long enough time to mature, and so Calico I was actually going to use Cilium because it had eBPF, but now you're telling me that Calico has it, so. That just confirms right there that using eBPF is the right decision in 2022. So, and in Linux 7, the hosts that we have at work do not have eBPF, so we have to use Calico. Another reason to go with Calico. If Calico has eBPF support now, then if you have a new enough kernel, you can use eBPF. If you don't, you can still use the same things you've learned about Calico on older stuff that doesn't have eBPF, older kernels, which should be my entire production cluster at work. So that makes the decision pretty obvious. I do want to read for myself though about Calico's changes to eBPF. So let's go figure that out. This is now a dated. This is last year. This comparison between Calico and Cilium is now dated. Apparently, it did say that one of them uses it and the other one doesn't. So I'm not even going to list it anymore. We need to see that Calico adds eBPF. I kind of want to enable the eBPF data plan in Calico. And apparently it's an extra thing. It used to be Hubble's going to have the power of eBPF. Yeah. The Calico announcement was February 2020. Really? Right after that blog. February 2020? It wasn't even correct when it was written. Hey, welcome to the world of the internet. This is why I stream all this shit. I'm deleting that blog. It's a misleading blog. So, does Calico use eBPF? An eBPF Calico implements Kubernetes service monitoring directly rather than relying on kube-proxy. Of course, this makes it highly desirable to disable kube-proxy when running eBPF mode. Whoa. Did I get this right? If you're using eBPF, you don't need kube-proxy anymore? Oh my God. Source code in the docs. Yeah. I mean, I generally would read that stuff too. Kube-proxy is just managing IP tables, right? Are you telling me I'm not even going to see kube-proxy running on a system if I use Calico anymore? Yeah, because kube-proxy is not fun. If there's a possibility that we can get rid of kube-proxy, not only is all the certification stuff going to be wrong, yeah, IP tables is archaic. It's also the source of all our fucking problems at work because they use all these other special ITB tables rules. And so anything that manages IP tables is also fucking with the underlying host OS because the people that set up our infrastructure set up these special rules for IP tables. We have had so many problems from kube-proxy fucking with IP tables. Berkeley Packet Filter. I don't know. I don't know what it stands for. I don't know if it's the same thing. Extended Berkeley Packet Filter, I guess. Okay. Did not know that. I did not know that. Let's put a little thing here. Learning a bit more about extended Berkeley Packet Filter. BPF. Berkeley. No more kube-proxy, which just manages IP tables. I really want to know that. I have a feeling Kubernetes is still going to run kube-proxy. It's just going to sit there kind of doing nothing. Multiple tables and NF tables, yeah. Much just for hardware, yeah. Yeah. So the next question I have obviously is like, does it have to be enabled or is it going to do it by default? And does it turn off kube-proxy? This I have all kinds of questions because this is really interesting, especially given our current situation. Of course, this makes it highly desirable to disable kube-proxy when running an eBPF in order to save resources and avoid confusion. Yeah, you think? Shit. I'm guessing that kube-proxy is not disabled by default. I cannot wait to go say no more kube-proxy, and they're like, what the hell? I think as long as you update your kernel, we can use the latest Calico. We don't have to use kube-proxy. We don't have to touch IP tables anymore. And they're like, what the hell? eBPF is not an acronym. Are you sure? eBPF stand for. I mean, that's what Calico says. I trust the internet on that one. Okay, so I mean, Calico. Another thing about Calico. Okay, so the Calico project team and company have been pushing the envelope on networking since the beginning of this whole Kubernetes thing. In fact, they pretty much defined the early phase of networking for Kubernetes. Uh, to be honest, you trust the eBPF website and not the Calico site. Okay, well, we have conflicting information. One of them from one of the most important CNI implementers of the whole Kubernetes world. We have conflicting information. I agree with the original name. eBPF is no longer an acronym for anything. In 2022. Well, that means the Calico site is wrong. Welcome to the internet. I mean, I trusted Calico, and you're saying, okay, I trust the eBPF site. All right, you're right. You're right. It is way more indeed. Yeah. Wow. I feel schooled by the docs. Is a full working language. I know that. That part I knew, but it wasn't just packet filter. So I was like, what? No. Yeah, everything interfaces with eBPF. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Chris was doing some stuff at one point with it. She was actually testing it for security. She found a security vulnerability with eBPF or something, I think. Okay. No longer represents the original. No longer matches the original acronym. BPF. Formerly extended Berkeley Packet Filter. God damn, the things you learn. Okay. No more kube-proxy. But must disable. So we're going to have to explicitly disable kube-proxy if we're going to make this work. Yeah? Okay, so here's eBPF. Yeah. There's just so many cool things. The low-level stuff in Go is so cool, too. It can have any kind of application tracing, profiling, monitoring. I actually really want to get deep. I want to write some eBPF code, actually. I really do. You can just make a compiled Go program and have it use eBPF to protect eBPF. I don't know. I imagine so. There's eBPF has been like really hot. People have been talking about it the last 2 years now. I remember when it was announced like 2 years ago. It was crazy awesome. And it was like, man, they're going to be able to do so many things. And the whole industry's just been blowing up using it in different ways. It's kind of like, generics and Go. It's like there's Go before 1.18, and there's Go after eBPF. There's going to be Linux before eBPF and Linux after eBPF. So understanding it is really important. And the best way to understand it is to write some code that uses it, in my opinion. So I am going to put that eventually. Cilium, projects like Cilium, BCC, BPF, Trace, Observability, CLang, Clang, verification. It's really fucking cool. It is. There has been some concern about people being able to do it safely, because malware can do all kinds of stuff with. In fact, there was already some malware that showed up on eBPF that quietly took over the network traffic. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, because if you get access to eBPF, you control all network traffic. In fact, there was a malware that I read about that uses eBPF to drop packets that would be detected by the firewall, the outbound firewall, on purpose, and it would recreate packets to go to different destinations. You have probes almost everywhere. Yeah. So, so it was the malware I remember reading about was so brilliant because it actually, once it got on the system, not only did it Trojan all your applications so you couldn't see the process running there, the rootkits or anything, but it also masked and blocked all the network traffic that would otherwise trigger it to be detectable in like PS output and stuff like that. Not just PS, but actual like network traffic. So you can still detect malware because it's going to be talking on the network. Well, in this case, it was shutting down the detection of the network traffic while still communicating on the network. So it basically allowed Trojaning your network stack to the point where you couldn't even detect malware through network analysis. Hide yourself from anything that inspects proc. Yeah. Yeah, anything that inspects proc, which includes PS and LS and all that. So, Kriki, yep, eBPF nightmare. Was it called Kriki? That was the one, I think. Network analysis, detection security, if compromised. Also controlled the network packet before and after. That's what I was saying. Yeah, so I do remember reading about this. I don't remember the name. Was the name Kriki? CRIKey? It was crazy amazing. It was like a whole new level of malware. It just completely owns your system, and there's really no detectable traces of it at all. And I'd be really interested to see how you would even find the thing. Was she talking about that? Yeah. My hindsight, you can't just undo history. It's not an acronym. It's not an acronym. We just read that on the official page, even though Calico says it is an acronym. There it is, which is no longer an acronym. It's the first line on the main webpage. Yeah, the concern was always that it was going to be open that up. I mean, as soon as they announced it, everybody knew that was going to happen. They decided to reverse history, yes. Apparently they did. But they made it, so. It depends on who you ask, but now you know what kind of fight you're walking into. Anyway. Yeah, so we've got... It really hasn't anything to do with packets at all. It really doesn't. No. I mean, no, it's just like low level to everything in the kernel, pretty much. Not everything, but it's like so much more than a packet filter. It wasn't ever even a packet filter in the first place. It was a packet manipulator, a packet controller. Just, yeah, it's way more than a packet filter. I advise using SELinux to make sure that you're better protected. Yeah. I mean, SELinux is the standard that everybody recommends. And that's like I think it's required by law, depending on the company. I hate it, but it's a pain in the ass, but it does its job. Yeah. You can block syscalls using SELinux. Yeah. Most people require SELinux. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Calico Ubuntu Server has SELinux enabled by default. Let's go check. Check to see if SE default on Ubuntu Server. Because absolutely, if I'm going to put eBPF, which I already have, it's an infrastructure thing. Once again, we are talking about Kubernetes, and we get sucked into infrastructure conversations. How many DevOps people even know what eBPF is? Very few. We're talking about people that, learn Kubernetes instead of Docker Compose, and they spend all their time in the cloud making applications and managing existing clusters, which is fine. We need those people, but we also need people that actually can talk about the setting up the intricacies of eBPF and picking Calico over Cilium and what it's about. We need this. So, you know, and people might complain about all the deep diving that I do, but this is why. If you don't know what SELinux, how many DevOps people have no fucking idea what SELinux is? They've never even heard of it. So about Anycast, I don't know what that is. We have LSM BPF, so no need for legacy LSMs. Huh. Okay. All right. So, is SELinux enabled by default on Ubuntu Server? I don't even remember how to check. I don't. I did. All I remember is managing SELinux probably, I want to say 16 years ago when it came out, and all the shit that it did that confused the hell out of me. Ashan on Ubuntu Pro. I don't think it is. SELinux on Ubuntu Tutorial. The following instructions disable AppArmor and enable SELinux. This could be the single most important criteria for picking Red Hat. Yep. Among all of the other things, the one critical thing is using AppArmor. I immediately regret my decision to use Ubuntu Server. Yeah. On the case install. I have to think about this very strongly. If you can't run SELinux, you cannot simulate. Yeah. I don't know why I missed that. I assumed SELinux was in everything. What do you mean I don't want to mess with it? I hate SELinux, but it's really important. Hey, Core. Functions initiated. Thank you for rating. SELinux is only in the Red Hat sphere. No, it's not. It's not a Red Hat thing. Is SELinux from Red Hat? How did I make it all that time using SELinux at work and not know that? Security Enhanced Linux is a security architecture for Linux system allows administrators. We developed by the United States agency NASA as a series of patches Linux kernel. Useful info in the context as of a container. Yeah, but we're not talking about containers. We're talking about the underlying host OS with running eBPF for Calico, which could be owned. SELinux is supported elsewhere, but it's a hit or miss outside Red Hat sphere. Susie has it. Complexity means that you can do a lot of things very wrong. Yeah. AppArmor can do the same. I have never liked the architecture of SELinux, put it that way. I like what it does. Run in the kernel, right? Yeah. Cannot do the same. That's what I was going to say. No. There are other practical considerations outside of what it can and can't do. The biggest one being that government contracts require it. So, how's it going? Co-function initiated. Yep. I have to think about this. When we think of our imaginary company, okay, for Rocky is actually pretty good. They are. I am good, except for I just realized I'm going to have to reinstall my OSs on all 40 of my systems. I don't know when I'm going to schedule that. The jokes about me not having my cluster up until December are very real now at this point. I don't like SELinux. I don't like it. Maybe it's because I haven't ever fully mastered it. My experience with SELinux as a noob was changing passwords and stuff and not being able to do it using the regular password changing commands. because SELinux was activated, it was like fucking with everything. And modern policies are much better. Yeah, I mean, we're talking seriously 15 years ago. That was my last experience with it. So why would you go with it? Why do you give a shit? If you're an administrator, I know it really was. And I have to get over that. God damn it. Honestly, okay, let me tell you what I'm thinking. I'm just gonna blurt it out. I started out using Proxmox and then having VMs so I could bring up, whatever kind of OS I wanted to. It didn't matter. Right? And Proxmox fell on its face for reasons I don't want to get into. And then I was like, okay, we're going to use Rocky. So I started installing Rocky, and I was super annoyed by the installation process. Being 90 years old, I know. So, I mean, the Ubuntu installation process is so much better. It's much easier. They do Cloud Init. I mean, all of those things. I was like, okay, I'm going to put all my eggs, all of my mind share, into app systems. And that also made me faster because I don't have to deal with Red Hat, which is a totally different universe, from Ubuntu, which is a totally different universe. It just so happens that Ubuntu has got the container world locked the fuck up. I mean, everybody uses container run, Ubuntu for the basis of the containers and everything else, right? And Mint and Kali are all Debian based. They're all, they're all apt based. They're all in the same universe. And in this world, as you can see just by looking at the landscape, anytime you can make a simplification and go for just one thing instead of having to keep your mind focused on two things, then you're going to be better because you're going to have fewer things to learn, or Debian or Alpine or anything yet. So, talks about eBPF and AppArmor and SELinux together. Yeah. So, all of those things considered, Red Hat is really the clear leader in the enterprise. Red Hat is really the clear leader in the enterprise, right? And this is kind of rewinding quite a bit of time that we did this when we talked about this, but the primary reason that they run Red Hat in the enterprise that I was citing is because Red Hat, they want the enterprise. They want things that cater to the enterprise. They want people that say, who gives a shit about running Linux on a Mac? We don't care about that. We're not going to support that. How about, on your mainframe or something like that? That's Red Hat. It was also the thing that put me off. It really put me off when I found that out. I was reading that and like, what are you doing? That's totally stupid. And so running Red Hat on my Mac Minis is not apparent. It's not obvious. There's a lot of drivers and stuff that are missing for the Intel chips, which are completely 100% compliant in every way on these machines. And it should be able to run Red Hat no problem. So I kept running into these like real points of friction because let's face it, Red Hat doesn't care about the open source Linux community. They care about the open source enterprise customers that they're going to get. And that is a rant that I've done many times. And so that pushed me so far away from Red Hat. I'm like, okay, I'm over here on Ubuntu. I'm going to put a bunch of servers on everything. And I finished all that. That's all done. So all my Ansible is all using APT. It's not using DNF. It's not using any of that stuff, right? It's all using APT installation procedures. And all of my knowledge and all of my playbooks and everything are based on Ubuntu Server. And by the way, many of those playbook tasks and rules and stuff double for containers that are running as well as for the underlying host physical machine. And I like that. I like that everything is in the apt space. Everything is in the Debian space, right? Even though Debian just announced last week that they are now going proprietary. They're no longer staying FOSS. And that made headlines in the stream. Somebody was talking about that yesterday. Okay, so that is the current state. But there's a big problem with that. And I'm going to tell you about the problem right now. So, The problem is, from a practical perspective, if you want to prepare yourself as an infrastructure engineer to work in the enterprise, and this was the reason I went with Rocky in the first place. It's the reason Het Tennis swears by Rocky. It's the reason that everybody swears by Red Hat, who has home labs. It's the reason I ran Fedora. We're just trying to decide whether to go with Fedora or Ubuntu again. This is the reason that I ran Fedora on my laptop all those years that I was at IBM, because I wrote RPMs actually, and everything I did was all Red Hat. It was all Red Hat. In fact, I didn't know APT very well at all. I could barely use it back in 2012 or so. So the one thing I did not consider, which is now coming up, is support and usage of SELinux. And you can like it or hate it, but SELinux is mandated. It was invented by the government, so it's actually mandated by several government deployments. Right? What? Oh, can I come eat this with you?
I'm still cooking our sandwich.
Okay. My wife made me some eggs and sausage. I'm going to have to go ahead and take a break and eat with her. She's still cooking hers, but that was very nice. That's very nice of her. So it makes me feel a little bit better knowing that I'm going to probably have to get SELinux exec code. Thought it was just iptables and filters on those labels. So I have a question, and this question is really key to the rest of my base operating system distribution selection. Is SELinux required by any enterprise scale deployment? And I have a feeling the answer is yes. And if the answer is yes, then you have to make a very important, very, we have people from governments, some of whom are in the security industry in the governments in our chat right now, and they are confirming that this is true. You can put SELinux on Ubuntu. We were talking about that, but it's kind of crossing the streams to do so. The government has SELinux requirements. I know this. I remember this because when SELinux came out, I managed several accounts among the Fortune 500 that we did manage on the account I was on. Remember, I wrote all that software to do auditing and stuff for these accounts, and several of those accounts, many of the checks that we wrote were to check that SELinux was enabled. I actually wrote shellcode that ran in BigFix and Tivoli that said, "Are you SELinux or not? Otherwise, you're out of compliance." And might not be useful tested on Ubuntu. Yeah. I mean, okay, let's just be real. Okay, so why are you creating a home lab, right? If you're creating a home lab because you want to get good with infrastructure that you're going to likely encounter in the wild, or you're getting good with it because you want to, do it. So in our fictional scenario, which I'm going to return to direct me on these decisions, my fictional scenario is I am creating a Kubernetes cluster, or all, frankly, of the IT infrastructure for a small to medium-sized think tank of machine learning people who are poorly funded and unable to pay Red Hat for subscriptions and things like that, but that are trying to get by. That is my fictional scenario. I keep coming back to that because I am making technical architecture decisions based on that fictional assumption. And that specific shop would not need to use SELinux unless those humble, awesome machine learning people need their applications to be deployed and integrated with the government. So if there is some form of government interaction that they require, so if they are going to produce, which I would imagine this fictional company would want to do, I would imagine this fictional company would want to do sociology studies and things like that would inform, economic policy and be submitted and stuff like that. And if they did that, if they had any contractual interactions with the government would extend its security requirements and enforcement onto that company, and that company would therefore be forced to use SELinux and Rocky or whatever. And AppArmor requires you to write a policy. Ubuntu Advantage Enterprise model. And so this is super important because in this fictional scenario that we're making this decision, which by the way is a very likely scenario, it's very important that we make sound decisions about the architecture that are not going to make us impossible. I mean, imagine deploying your entire architecture and learning that the entire reason for your company's existence has been negated because you can't use any of your IT infrastructure for any government contract because those government contracts require you run SELinux. And if that's true, if that's true at all, and I believe it is because I've seen those requirements. I've been put under those requirements while I was writing. HIPAA compliance is a different thing, but there are medical requirements and stuff. Also, I don't know if they have the same security requirements because of medical records. I think the law actually extends over to medical records as well, and that probably filters into SELinux requirements for those machines. And this is where Red Hat's just laughing all the way to the bank. But what if they change their mind and now acquire AppArmor? I don't know. Unless I don't know of any government on the planet. The reason I keep bringing up government because I know government has requirements for this. There are other companies that have this kind of this kind of requirement as well. They ask for NIST SP 800-53. I would never even know that. Thank God you're here. And I'm sure it doesn't say SELinux anywhere. Are you talking about the medical stuff or there's the general requirement? Red Hat is the only distro we use in the company. Anything else is a no. Yeah, but why? Why? See, this is the thing. The reason that I was able to dismiss use of Red Hat was not because of SELinux. It was because of government rules, right? Yeah. So government uses that standard as a baseline. And honestly, I think, look, whether or not it's directly required by NIST SP 800-53, people still use it because that's become the de facto way to implement those requirements. Oh, they definitely do require an OS. Are you kidding me? They definitely do. Yeah. They don't demand a specific company. They demand SELinux because they made it. The NSA made it. To pressure officials to change regulations and laws regarding this stuff. Yes, it does. You don't get federal money if you don't implement it. Right. It mentions AppArmor and or SELinux. Really? Very interesting. No, they can definitely enforce it. They do. By law, they can't, but they have to say you have to meet these standards, and they say these are the two products that meet the standards, or this is the one product that meets the standard. They have to allow competition. They do, but they don't. I mean, they didn't. I can tell you for a fact that when I was at IBM, if it didn't have SELinux, you couldn't use it in the government, period. Because it was the only thing that implemented the standards that the government agreed to. In some in early days, yeah. Mostly managed by Red Hat. It's completely different. Yeah. The guide helps you meet 53. The government doesn't have to do anything. And they don't. So, well, I'm really, really interested in AppArmor because I fucking hate SELinux. I hate it with a passion. At least I'm sorry. Let me restate. 15 years ago, I hated SELinux with a passion. Today, I would need to make an informed decision about the burden of SELinux versus AppArmor. If AppArmor is indeed something that fulfills 800-110 NIST. Has an interesting find. Audit 2 policy. Hey, Fuzzy. FUZ, Fuzzy. Ha! Government has OMB, and that is now adding requirements for agencies to keep getting funny. Yeah. Right, but Ubuntu won't develop AppArmor. If it couldn't fulfill that requirement, they would be shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah. What I want to know, first of all, I love Ubuntu, but I don't think Canonical has got the chops to maintain a NIST compliant offering. I just don't. I don't like saying that. I don't think they have it. Red Hat definitely has it. They have the best Linux engineering on teams on the planet. I mean, I can hate on them all the time for being corporate and telling the FOSSI community to go fuck themselves, but I I can't deny the fact that Red Hat is the dominant engineering leader. They overcomplicate things and over-engineer things all the time, but they are still Canonical is casuals. They are very casual. The thing that's great about Canonical though is that they are very end user oriented. Their interfaces are better. They're easier to comprehend and digest. Their cloud init that they've invented is completely amazing. Snap is a disaster, but the stuff that the fact that they even invented Snap over there, the installation process is better. They are more focused on user experience. They always have been, because their core principles have always been about, Shuttleworth has many times said, making Linux approachable to end users and stuff like that. Red Hat could give a shit. Red Hat is like the person who's gonna make a really complicated makefile without needing to, because they can. The biggest problem with Red Hat is they're so good. They're such good engineers that end up over-engineering shit, forcing it down everybody's throat, and then somebody comes along, who has no technical knowledge, and go, "Why didn't you just do this?" And they're like, "Huh, I didn't think of that," because they're so stuck in their stupid ivory tower engineering brains. Dropping sand, exactly. So you have to pick from the worst of two evils here. And I went with Ubuntu Server because I want to support this, user-facing, user-focused thing. But if Canonical doesn't have the chops to create a NIST-compliant security offering, I mean, let's just be real. The government is going to be like, okay, let's put AppArmor in there because we can't have a monopoly, as Mossy says. But the truth is, their hearts are with SELinux. They always have been. All of the audit tools are based on SELinux. I know this because I wrote them. I wrote audit compliance checks that check for SELinux on the systems and reported put you as red if you didn't have it. I mean, this was a long time ago. This was 2009. 2008, actually. That's when I wrote all that stuff. But security and functionality is usually the rub for most of the crazy standards, yeah. Ubuntu is federal AMP certified. They meet the requirements. Ubuntu Server meets the requirements. Okay, so this whole conversation came about from talking about eBPF and how somebody was saying, man, I'm sure glad SELinux is there to keep us safe from eBPF, fooling around. So is the current Ubuntu's, I would really like for this to be true, what you're saying, Taniwha, because I really, really don't want to do SELinux again. I just don't. First of all, I don't trust Red Hat on this. I trust them to do the right thing, but I also trust them to make it overcomplicated and impossible to understand quickly, because that's what they do. That's Red Hat. And so to stay on one OS for the rest of your life, which would it be? That's what we're trying to decide. It depends on what you're talking about. If we're talking about servers, right? I do not want to make a server distro choice again in my life, ever. So the only time I would want to do this, you need to fiddle with SELinux to install Kates, to be honest. Maybe set some SEO2, really. Ubuntu Gov has the details. Oh, I didn't know they had a site for that. Thank you, Taniwha, for being the voice of reason. Go read about it. Secure and certified open source for public sector. Ubuntu provides a secure platform for government agencies to build, operate, and innovate with open source infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. We have a critical government IT certification covered. Ubuntu Advantage meets certification requirements for the public sector. Shit. Oh, but you have to buy Advantage. Yeah. We just read this the other day. We were like, hey, do they even have a pro offering? And persistent storage, we're not doing that. We haven't got that far yet. You kind of have to go down the SELinux rabbit hole if you're going down the container rabbit hole. No, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. If you're going to do the eBPF, and you can use it for business, you have to buy their Advantage program, though. Yeah, we were looking at this. So they have Ubuntu Pro. They give you access to versions of their stuff that's free for 5 machines. Yeah, we already read about that. I have 50 machines. So the answer is no. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fair to say that in my pretend think tank company, um, Talos, we probably do that a little bit. Yeah. Uh, Cost comparison to Red Hat. Good point. Enterprise support and services get support. Ubuntu Pro. SELinux is not supported on GKE. Use AppArmor instead. You fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? If GKE would write off SELinux like that, oh my god, that is huge. That is so crazy. You're going to use pod security context which is supposed to both AppArmor and SELinux. Yeah, I know. I know. And that's what I'm trying to say. So we're trying to make a distro choice here in case you're just wondering. Uh-huh. I wasn't planning on getting hit with this right now. Remember, the reason we're talking about security again is because of the CNI EBNF, eBPF utilization that everybody is using now. Both Cilium and Calico, which I learned today, are using eBPF. And everybody's like, well, if you're using eBPF, you better be damn sure you're using some kind of like SELinux like security layer because you're going to get screwed if you don't. And you need to change your policies for that. And both SELinux and AppArmor are fine choices. It should be what is most predictive and useful. And yeah, and I based on that, then I can, if that statement from Taniwha is true, and I trust it is. I mean, there's no more trustworthy person when it comes to security policy in our community. I wish I could cite all of Taniwha's credentials. I don't want to dox Taniwha here, but there's just Taniwha is the voice of God on this topic. in my estimation, I don't nobody who's more steeped in this research and has the experience. Why so dark? To protect your eyes and mine. I'm actually kind of happy to hear you say that. The other thing too about Taniwha that I really love is Taniwha has always been, no matter how passionate they are, they always represent the situation properly and professionally, unlike me. I am flip-flopping around all the time, like with new passionates, and I'm being driven by my emotions and my gut and the level of inebriation, my blood alcohol level. I am constantly my decisions are always being driven by the wrong things. And so having somebody like Taniwha in our community, and we've had several other people, we have other people in the community that are like me, and we have other people that are like Taniwha, but Taniwha is very much a very calm voice, and that's exactly what you need when it comes to security policy. You need somebody that's a very even keel kind of person, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for chiming in. But I mean, your house sitting in a dark room, shiny display is the least healthy thing you can do. No, it's not. There's many worse things I could be doing for my health right now. Some of them I actually do, including last night. You realize very little. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. What would I do without my chat? I would be doing a ton of research, actually. That's what I did. That's what I did before I had chat. Before I had chat, I would be in communities all over the place, like interacting in chat and IRC. That's what I did before. So to a large degree, I mean, I just want to put big thanks to my community. Big thanks to the Twitch community for facilitating this discussion. And I believe it or not, I was in Second Life. I used to talk about this stuff with people. We would have conferences in Second Life. I actually we would have. I've been figuring out how to network with professionals for more than 2 decades. I know how to do it. I call it being a prescient technology professional, a PTP. And you just have to know what the technology is of the day. Right now, that technology is Twitch and live streaming. And thank God, it's very real time. I mean, but before we would do the same thing in IRC. You just had to find the right IRC channels. You had to find the right I mean, we're talking like ancient times, right? Before that, it was like the right UUCP news groups, right? You follow the right UUCP news groups and you have a dialogue there. Those are the places where all the people that matter are having a conversation. And so knowing where to go to have a conversation with, and I say it again, people who matter is super critical to the IT culture and the IT job. If you're gonna enter in this world, you have to know how to do that. And strangely enough, Twitch has been a wonderful experiment in that regard, and has produced extremely fruitful results. And I've just been citing some of those right now. Where would I be without you? I'd be lost, but I would be someplace else, wherever that place is, wherever I can find the Taniwhas and the Mossies and the Porsche Filts. That's where I would be. Considering all this eBPF stuff, it could potentially be possible to containerize the whole user space. That's a good question. I don't know. For reference, I remember in the Summit 2022, Isovalent Cilium was referencing this for eBPF security. They were using Tetragon. Interesting. I don't know about that one. Thank you for that. Yeah, let me go put that in the riffs in the links here. And as soon as you get a community together and you start publishing stuff like we've been doing, it's amazing how fast the community will grow from that, because they feel like their contributions are being lost on some random chat that's going to be refreshed and lost. And I've found that to be a successful way to build community over the years. It is one of my superpowers. I won't lie. I've been a community builder for a very long time. I'm probably better at that than coding. It doesn't have to be a big community. My community is curated. Because, if we had I don't want to go there. It's a negative. Any types on Twitch channels to meet Java enterprise community? Nope. You're not going to find that. Never seen a Java programmer on Twitch in my life. And I've been watching for 2.5 years. How to learn grow communities, yes. Implement list Torvalds officially announced kernel 6.0 on mailing list. Yeah, we need to go read that too. That's the one that all the Rust people are going to show us, and put it in our face. See, look, Rust is in the kernel. No, it's not. No, it's not. You can make modules with it. It's not the same thing. Yes, it is. I don't want to go there. Not right now. You guys are worth a weight in gold. Thank you. Streams, I believe. Search for JetBrains streams. Rob will give up the whole cloud native ecosystem and go with FreeBSD and custom bash chips. It's funny, LBG, is I actually like that. It's very old stuff. Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm kind of a system convert these days. Yeah, there's things you can do with system that you can never do with init scripts. And I honestly, I do. I won't lie. I'm saying things that are very controversial here, but kernel module's not the kernel. Yeah. And then when you're smirking because you think kernel modules are the kernel. And you're thinking, well, somebody doesn't understand how the kernel works. I know the kernel is mostly made up of modules. I know that. SELinux is in the concept of it was just a way to make sure that no malicious container can escape and restore eBPF in a kernel, right? I still think we'll need to be right for people who use Gen 2 and stuff. Compile the Rust compiler. Run wound up using OpenStack. I actually looked seriously at OpenStack. I looked very, very seriously at OpenStack. Yeah, I am not afraid of inventing my own wheel. Have done it on many things. Which one? More like FreeBSD fork. Rob West. No. Kernel modules can upgrade themselves to the kernel. Yeah, they kind of can. I know. So yes, Rust will be in the kernel, but nobody's going to rewrite the kernel in Rust. That's not what we're talking about doing. We're talking about enabling drivers to be written in Rust. The end. There was never anything more than that. Go listen to Torvald say it himself. Don't trust me. Ignoring what? Mossy. You can look at the language in Linux repo, but it will be modules, not the actual kernel core. Yeah. It will be the modules and not the active kernel core. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Getting those juicy government contracts. That is what I'm talking about. Samples, this is, I'm gonna quote you on that. I'm gonna quote you on this in my notes. This is the thing. When you're making these decisions, make sure you don't paint yourself or your company out of the ability to get those juicy government contracts. They are your lifeblood. And if you, after Taniwha has given us the gospel here, we can now say Ubuntu Linux server, not only is it required for GCP, but it is totally okay for use for government work. That means if my imaginary group of machine learning experts and their IT department want to get the government contracts, they can do it because they're in compliance with, and I'm going to actually write down the certifications thing. We copied it already, didn't we? Where is it? Did I move it? They're in compliance with the proper certificates, right? And that is it. That is all we need to know. And we can proceed. I'm becoming a Rust celebrity. I am not a Rust celebrity. Oh, SELinux? GPU driver and Rust, and we're able to get it source, get it for KDE. Very cool. I've said many times, I hope Rust is successful in that space. I've said it. I can hate on the syntax and the community and the leadership as much as I want, the fucking liars. And the people who are hypocrites, that is the word from somebody who stepped down as the moderator team publicly. I can hate on that all I want. Doesn't matter because the technology for that kind of thing makes sense. It also makes sense for WebAssembly. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to what we're going to do here. They were gushing about Rust drivers development. Yeah. Brian Cantrell has been saying for a long time, I deeply, deeply trust Brian Cantrell. The guy is a genius. He's a well-read genius. And he doesn't go with tech and just because of for tech's sake. He never has. And even though he worked at Joyent, which, it's kind of a mark against him, he has said this thing many, many times very publicly. And he builds Oxide Computing based on it, even though they haven't delivered a computer yet. Sounds about right for a Rust project. A bunch of vaporware and excitement about something that never actually materializes in production form. That's pretty much Rust right now. Except for Firecracker, which I'm looking forward to playing with. I'm not ready to do that yet, but we're going to do that. C is going to definitely dominate. It definitely is. Yeah. And when it's pretty amazing hardware, yes, it is. Drivers a good way to start. Yeah. If I were going to learn Rust and C, I would start with drivers. If you want to get into kernel stuff, if that's your obsession, it takes a very demented kind of person to want to do that. I've always wanted to. I just don't got the chops for it. I'm more of an application layer guy. Rust is where Go was 10 years ago. Unfortunately, yes, even though they came out around the same time. It finally kind of figured out what it wants to be, sort of. Yeah. Good production. Yeah, I know. Yeah, let's not go there. This Rust thing is never productive. At least I don't feel like it is. Been pretty good at level development. I think I would probably be okay with it, but I don't spend enough time there, So, I mean, there's just so much to cover as we've covered, right? If I'm going to do the Kubernetes thing and make money at it, The eBPF stuff, though, is really speaking to me. The Calico, yeah, we're going to do Calico. The eBPF stuff is really, really speaking to me because that is user land application space you can do and go that does kernel-like things like messing with routing and stuff. I imagine kube-vip actually probably uses some of that, but I can't prove that yet. I need to go through the source code. I actually kind of want to read the source code of kube-vip because it's a software layer. I think it's layer 2 is the right term. Is it layer 2? It's not 7. I think it's a layer 2 protocol for load balancing. I actually have to go eat. I know there's 90 people here, but I need to take a break, so I'm going to put some music on. And I'm going to let you talk for a good 8 to 10 minutes. There are a lot of great streamers out there. If anybody else is streaming, please let me know. Maybe Chris is on. I don't know who's on, but I actually am going to go have a little bit of breakfast with my wife. It'll take me about 8 minutes. And when I come back, I'm going to go ahead and install Calico, which has eBPF support and the longest history as a CNI provider. So that's the main reason I'm gonna do that. Okay, Ansible to build a workflow. All right, so here you go. Here's some hopefully not too loud devil music. May you enjoy the devil music. Okay, I'll be back. I'll put a timer on. Bye, bye, bye. What a good girl, Sam. A good doggy. I didn't play with Ansible, Podman Ansible modules. Not yet. All right, so we made some decisions. Time to get busy. This music is almost over. We'll wait till after the end. We'll wait till this ends. All right. All ready to go here. I guess hey YouTube, I'm sorry I didn't pause you. I apologize for that. Normally I pause YouTube for this stuff, for the breaks. This means I just made myself completely demonetized. Oh well. Yeah, I just demonetized myself because I put all that music in the YouTube video. So this YouTube video is going to be completely demonetized, as if I cared. The amount of money, I think I make maybe $40 on it, YouTube every month. It's ridiculous. So anyway, let's get back to it. Let's install the CNI, which is really the goal. And we now know what we're going to install. I don't have to rethink my operating system choice. I'm going to keep what I have. I find it very interesting that the GKE uses AppArmor. I gotta tell you, I find that hugely remarkable. I'm super glad that we can keep Ubuntu Server because I want to get big into cloud init kinds of things, and I've always been kind of an apt person as of like 2010. I've pretty much been Debian and apt the whole time. I just lost 20 cents, I know. MNT Technology Review, Google's new AI can hear a snippet of a song and then keep on playing. Really? Wow. All those loopers are going to love that stuff. DNF for life? No. I mean, how can you say that? DNF hasn't even been around until like last year or 2 years ago. When did DNF start? When did DNF? Down not to fuck. I can never see anything else every time I see DNF. I was like, if they just changed that one letter. Dandified Yum, really? I mean, who picked that name even? That is such a stupid ass name. Or the DNF is the advanced generation version of the popular Yellow Dog updater, which has modified Yum. I'm hating on DNF. I'm sorry. DNF is actually, I mean, I'm judging it completely based on its name. Yum is Yellow Dog update manager, yes. And thank God for Yum, right? Before that, we just had RPM, and that was it. For Android app development, I have no idea. I am really sorry. I have no Jose. How do you say your name? Jose Ruiz. I have no idea. I have no idea. I would think for Android app development, you probably want a Mac. I'm guessing. I think for most mobile app development, you probably, that's not the topic right now, but that's probably what most people would want. And not an M1, which I don't know if that's even a thing now. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Mobile app development is a totally different beast from anything that I've ever done. It's cool and all, and I used Python Kivy for a while, and all the different things to do that, progressive web apps and stuff. I wouldn't even do mobile apps unless I had to, which I've thought about doing for kick. Anyway, let's get back to what we're doing. Calico installation. So I picked Calico, so we have to go read about it. Redo installations. Yeah. Or Ubuntu and a VM on a Mac for iOS. That's what I would do. Yeah. Yeah, I would get a Mac because you got to have a Mac. Period. You can, but it's not supported. Bad idea. First of all, you can't do any. Yeah. Anyway, I gotta get off the topic. Thank you for the questions. I'm gonna stop looking at chat for a bit because I gotta work on stuff. If other people want to answer questions or ask questions that are not on topic, that's totally fine. I'm just gonna look away for a bit. I'm also gonna set my Pomo timer to remind me to stand up and go outside and thing. Oh, it's only at 20 minutes right now. We're gonna do a 58 minutes. So let me restart that for 58 minutes. There we go. Okay, so installing of the CNI is next. In fact, let's go see if we can find our documentation that is guiding our rather roundabout way of doing everything. And yes, we're trying to follow the official Kubernetes docs. Creating a cluster with kubeadm page. We've been on this page a million times. That's hyperbole, but you know. So we did this. We installed a runtime. We got the control plane endpoint node. We got our we tested our kube thing. Actually, let's try it again. Curl. Wait, what? Check it. We have the thing. We're going to curl HTTPS Kates, which is our virtual IP for that's being served up by kube-vip. Now that our kubelet is running and now it's crash looping, and we can run that and we can see that. Oh, hey, you don't have certificates set up, and we don't have any CNI at all. So, but this is actually an answer, which means that it's up. So, try to detect the container runtime. We're pretty sure it uses creasesock. We didn't have to specify that. We didn't do the API server address. We didn't have to do that. So we did our kubeadm. We have one control plane node running right now. Consider uses by API advertised server. Don't need this. More information. Reference guide using kubeadm with a configuration file. To customize control plane components, including optional IPv6, not doing it. Reconfigure a cluster that's already been done. See, reconfiguring a cluster. I probably should do that at some point, but not right now. To run kubeadm again, you must first tear down the cluster. Kube drain, reset. Yeah, we're not doing that. I do need to do that eventually. I need to practice like migrations because we're going to be doing migrations, upgrades, and stuff. kubeadm init, for instance, for a series of pre-checks. We did this already and we got all of these things. You can now join any number of machines by running the following on each node as root. kubeadm join, control plane host, control plane port. I think the port is inferred, but I'm not sure. Token, discovery token. I think we have to install the CNI before we do that. I don't think you can do this before you install the CNI. It didn't actually tell us to install the CNI, but I think it's implied. One of those things where it decides to assume things. I hate this about the docs. #6. They talk about the physical network. You can join nodes without CNI. Can you? You can? CNI is only for the pods to talk to each other. Oh, thank you so much for saying so. Okay, I'm going to put that in my notes. Okay, so learned that CNI installation not required to join it. That would make sense too, because you actually install the CNI using Kubernetes, using the API. And if they couldn't talk, right? So container networking, yeah. So CNI installation not required to join nodes to cluster. I just put in a note here for myself. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't tell me when to install the CNI. It's not specified. Also, should I use the internal manager certs? Yes. I'm going to put that down here. Even though we don't do that at work, we manage our own certs externally, which I think is fucking stupid. I don't even know where that decision came from. Does anybody disagree? Is there any reason whatsoever to manage your certs outside of kubeadm? Like completely independently, even though you use kubeadm for the commands to generate the certs and stuff. Does anybody disagree with that assumption? I believe that in 2022, managing certs outside of Kubernetes is stupid. You run your own PKI. We do, which I hate. And we mess it up all the time. And I don't think it's needed for Kubernetes. I really don't. Because Kubernetes has all its own things, right? So you never manage certs in Kubernetes. Wait a second. Too high a security risk. Wait a second. Okay, talk to me about that. So for ingress, absolutely. They're different. So I would rather manage all the certs a consistent way. Manage certs outside. Right. Certs come from a KMS. Yes. So, for those who don't know what we're talking about, when you set up kubeadm, it automatically generates a ton of certs internally. And you have to explicitly say, I want to use these external certs, which I did not do during my init. And I feel like I screwed up because it wasn't listed as a thing. It didn't remind me, and I need to go back and do it over again. And intermediate to kube design itself, yeah. You whenever you get them in the cluster, every time you start up your kubelet, you have to use arguments that point to the certs in the other location. And that's, I know that because that's all our startup scripts have. Okay, let me keep reading here for a second. This section contains important information about stuff. You must deploy a CNI-based pod network so you can do things. Hi. You have something to say that you want to share with the whole world and YouTube forever? Forever.
You guys can debate this topic then. Okay, so we were out of dog poopy bags. So normally
no dog poop bags. Got it.
So normally I go to Ross and I get the
dog
them there.
Yeah.
Which is 1/3 of the price of like Harris Teeter or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we need them today, and I don't want to go to the store, so I went on Amazon.
Yeah.
And then I was able to buy a big box of over 1,000
dog poop dogs.
And
dog bags.
When you hit the $25 limit, which included one Nylabone for the dog to get her off the back of your back for the rest of the afternoon. Then,
yeah, eBay has them cheaply too. Apparently,
I know, but they're going to be here this afternoon.
Wait, this afternoon?
They're going to be here this afternoon between 4 or 6 or 2 and 6 p.m.
You don't even have to spend gasoline to go out and get them.
That's what I'm saying. By the time you think of the gasoline, going to the store, walking through the store, putting it in your basket, walking in front, standing in line,
then
coming back.
This rant brought to you by Doris,
10 minutes,
an Amazon fan.
10 minutes on Amazon, and now I don't have to think about it at all
that's
anymore.
Great.
It's like
that's great.
Mental space, gas, time, energy.
We live in the future.
It is. I mean, I like.
Can you imagine if Bezos had drones? What would happen? Like, oh yeah, push a button, we drop it on your house.
Everyone's gonna have a vacuum slot, like in the Jetsons.
My
God! Imagine if he built apartment buildings.
Imagine.
And then it was like
he might
basically with chutes.
He's tried.
So you go down
by
you just, like,
roads.
Grab your stuff in the chute.
Oh, he's gonna make apartments.
Like groceries.
Amazon apartments.
Be like boom.
You can move in the real estate. He'll have it all.
Oh my God, that would be so sick.
It'd be sick.
Would be the Jetsons.
And terrifying.
Yeah, it's
the Musk is probably going to try. No, Musk is too obsessed with Mars.
It's the closest we can come to what is it that they have?
Dog poop yes.
Where they create it. What's it called?
The Orville.
You know, Orville, where they create the thing in the.
The thing with the thing.
You know where they make the food.
They don't have to grow the food,
they just make it.
Yeah, it's a replicator, but not
like that.
Yeah, Musk is already making pre-made small homes.
Wow.
Sick. Ecological just followed because of this, because they like you. Doesn't she look like Kaylee? She looks like Kaylee today. You want to see a zoom
Firefly.
in? I know you do.
Yeah.
I do. I want to see a zoom in. Where are you going? Why are you turning the light on?
can
Ow!
see your
Ow! Vampire light.
There's my Kaylee hair.
Soylent Green is people. Wait, come here.
What?
I'm not done with you. There we go.
And there's my Kaylee hair.
I know. And my
And the dog.
my
and the messy
dog
room.
and the messy
Just like when I
room.
was young, living in chaos again. Is it me or is it just the people I attract?
She tolerates
That's the
my
question.
presence.
Or is it when you have intellectual leanings, you just end up having chaos around you?
Look,
because you don't value
I am constantly
doing
cleaning the
that.
chaos
I know,
and then adding more
But
chaos.
no, I'm just asking myself because seeing my old movies where I'm walking through all the chaos.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is it me or is it the people I attract?
The second one makes it easier for you, your ego, probably. It's my fault.
Every time I've been by my own, I've been...
You've been with people that are me.
No, I said when I've been on my own, I've been organized. Yes, I have stuff, but it's generally been more organized. But
my stuff, I have a reputation for having the coolest, cleanest racks you've ever seen.
yeah, you got
I have
rack.
great rack.
You have a great rack.
And the rest of my life, no. My cars have always been clean and immaculate.
Car's not clean now.
Well, it's because it doesn't work.
No.
Super, yeah.
What? You got something?
No, Rob's room is way organized than mine. That's kind of scary. Wait, it said starting. We're not starting. What the hell? Okay, I promise we're going to go back to work now.
Right. Sorry.
Thank you for the distraction,
I'm leaving,
wife of
bye.
mine. Are you like going? You're leaving me?
Incredibly organized studio.
Okay.
With everything is labeled and sorted.
I'm sure Doris. Whoopsie. I'm sure Doris would like you to go check her Instagram out at this moment, and see how cool her studio is.
See my organization. Thank you.
And
IKEA.
she went to IKEA on her own, which is a very dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing to let your wife go to IKEA by herself.
No. We don't have room to put stuff.
Oh, the perfect cup. Okay, I
There's
guess
my rack.
there's your rack, honey.
Well, not that rack. I was like my rack of shelves.
Yeah.
Look
Mm-hmm.
how pretty those look framed.
I should like this as a supportive husband.
Yes.
Okay, look at that rack,
Look at
man.
that rack.
Look at that rack.
Look, all my pencils, all my drawing materials, everything. My brushes are
Yeah,
all sorted.
we are all about the racks lately.
I know. This little tray,
Wait,
that
what?
letter tray.
What?
This little letter tray. I have
Yeah.
like my watercolor monotypes, one that's finished,
Yeah.
one I'm working on.
Yeah.
The extra plates to be started. It's like so
Yeah.
fucking organized.
Look at that. It's so organized. Nice rack, Doris. They like your rack.
I got a good rack too, right?
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Family of racks.
Yeah. New studio. They've been
That was
dying.
before.
They've been
That
following
was
the drama.
before I organized.
And then you organized.
That was like in the beginning.
Did you make that little Heidi chick? No, she's
that's
anime.
She's a GIF. Yeah, and that's from
She's a GIF.
I grew up watching that.
Oh, you grew up watching.
Yeah. So, and then I touched up the paint.
Oh my God, what is this?
That's
This is young Doris
and
playing
Max.
fights with young
He was
Max.
2.
God, you were hot. You still are hot.
Look,
I'm
had
sorry. Did I said
boobies
that?
because was breastfeeding.
Yeah. Okay.
See, look at that. Oh my God, they're huge
Huge boobies.
for me.
God bless YouTube. I mean, this is my wife, and it relates to me somehow. I promise. Okay, back to
Origami show.
we are very random. I mean, I tried to manage your perception of me behind a green screen before, and now I just keep the door open, and my wife randomly walks in, and I show you.
We're just keeping it real.
I'm just whatever.
This is authentic.
It's like Mr. Rogers getting a visit from
The mailman.
the mailman or his friend,
It
whoever that is.
You are Mr. Rogers.
Who won the fight? Who won, Doris?
Oh, I won. I pulled.
She always
I
wins.
picked him up and dropped him on his head. Okay, not his head, his hands, and then he slowly walked it out.
Oh my God. You are so cute.
funny.
You are very cute. All right, oh, bye. See, look at this. Is her old. Remember her old studio? By the way, this is not called spray paint. Don't you dare call this spray paint in the presence of an artist.
Aerosol.
It's called aerosol.
I call it.
You call it aerosol, they'll think you're like a plebe. You're like, what? You uncultured plebe. How dare you call this?
If you call it spray paint, not aerosol.
And if you
Aerosol,
say
yeah.
graffiti, you might get slapped. It's not
Street
graffiti.
art.
It's street art. Now you know. The more you know when talking to an artist. Okay, back to whoa.
What?
I'll drink to that. That mug is awesome. It's worth way more than the $50 you paid for the other one. I shop at Target.
Okay.
Oh, yay. All right, bye.
Okay, bye.
I have to do things.
Okay.
And there's people here. There's 100 people here wondering what the hell.
All right, I guess the dog's staying in the studio.
This is actually Clay.
It's in progress. And
Yeah.
She's drying. And I
She's
can't
drying.
now 'cause
She's
I
been
can't
working on it.
finish 'cause of my studio move.
Oh, look at this. They're like getting real with the.
That's Renee Holiday.
That's Renee Holiday. I haven't met her yet.
No,
She's crazy funny.
she's amazing. And that's Melissa, who makes encaustic paintings.
Those are actual earrings.
Yeah, she makes those.
She's gonna lose her ears from that.
They're actually super light.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Still, it would worry me. I'd
She
get caught on
makes
something.
Jewelry.
She makes jewelry.
Yeah. She's
All right.
trying to get me to make jewelry.
I know. This is true.
Well, they have cool tools in it.
Carpe demo was great. Capario demo was great. I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's a martial. Isn't that a martial arts from like Latin America?
Probably.
I think my friend Mike does.
All these dendels.
Yeah, that's the old studio.
Yeah, the old
Look how
studio.
cluttered.
So cluttered.
It feels so. And I was able to put some.
Are there boobs? If there are boobs, I'm gonna get TOS'd.
Not really that you can see.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Look how.
To be careful. Yeah, you have to stream to like AnyFans or Pornhub. There's museums.
I know.
There's museums who have their stuff on Pornhub, on OnlyFans and Pornhub.
OnlyFans.
I heard-
They're not gonna go to Pornhub
Why not?
because that sounds like porn.
Okay.
They go to OnlyFans.
They go to OnlyFans because they can put boobies on there that are actually artsy boobies. It's different than porn boobies. They're different. They may have overlapped. Okay, back to work. Back to work. That was a great Doris break. Back to the registration. Crazy. My dog does not know what's going on. Okay, so back to CNI. I mean, how can you top that? Wait, what time is it? All right, so we have an hour. We have an hour left before we have to switch gear. We're going to go do the boost after this. Beginner boost is after this. What? The charger's on the table, so I have a car now. Thank God. CNI. kubeadm should be CNI agnostic and validate CNI providers. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, Denzel. Apply the CNI stuff. I don't know if we need to do this right now. Manage no labels. Okay, so I want to join something to the network. So let's do that. Let's join a node to the network using the join command. You had to clean up some street art from someone named. He used an aerosol as a medium. I think that's funny. I don't think my wife would think that's funny, but I think it's funny. All right, more information. Using kubeadm init with configuration file. We did that. We're not going to do that actually right now. Tear down the cluster. Reconfigure kubeadm init. Liddy. You waited for it. If you join a node with a different architecture or cluster, make sure that you deploy daemon sets. kubeadm init first runs a series of prechecks to ensure that there's things. This I know. I don't remember it saying apply. You can now join with whatever. Did it tell me that? And then I just kind of like blew it off. Taniwha, where I'm supposed to be doing my certs now, right? Discovery token CA cert hash 256 hash. God damn it. I feel like I'm supposed to do my certification stuff. I mean, not certification. I'm supposed to set up my certs and my PKI before I do the install. Yes or no? Can I come back after the fact, after I join all my stuff to the cluster? I got my cluster working, right? Can I come back after the fact and actually institute a true PKI CA thing? I mean, inquiring minds want to know. Because Kubernetes does all this for you by default. And then you come back and no, I want an external CA. So I feel like it's something that I should have had it set up already. kubeadm will set up the search, right? But it won't use the external stuff. Can rerun phases. I can. Okay. So, yeah. If you're doing Kubernetes the hard way, if you're doing the hard way, you're having a really. Are you making fun? This is definitely very close to the hard way, but it's not. In the hard way, you don't even have static pods. You're just like running daemons over everything. If you think that's a good idea, check yourself, because it's not. The hard way is completely wrong. Cert manager, yeah. I want to join a node of the network. That's what I want to do, and I want to install my CNI. Is what I want to do. I think I'm actually going to jump to installing CNI to Kubernetes sign certificate admin.conf to subject blah is a break glass super user group that bypasses authorization layers. Yeah, I do this all the time. I actually copied admin.conf down to my remote system so I can get access, which is a bad thing. You're not supposed to do that. You should set up RBOC and you know, all that. And I need to do that. I'm going to do that. It's going to take me years to do it. But joining nodes to your cluster, make a record of kubeadm join command, which I did not do. How do you re-get the kubeadm join command if you can't get it? Forgot kubeadm join command. There's got to be a way to go get it again. Yeah. There's got to be a way. How do I find the join command for Kubernetes to the master? Especially because I've lost the original kubeadm join. This is exactly my problem. Kubeadm token create print join command. I would not have guessed that. I would not have guessed this. So I'm going to put this in my log. I'm going to put it right here. Print code, okay. For when you forget. Yep. I can do that. That's cool. The internet's awesome. Control 1. Hey, look at you. You copied the same thing. Okay, that is not going to work because it's not root-ish. Why are you taking so long? Oh. Boom. All right. I'm going to copy you. I'm going to copy you, and I'm going to go over to Mini 1, which supposedly has a kubelet on it. And we'll just go do this. I don't like doing everything as root, but in this case, what the hell? What? What? Okay, I'll go lock it. What? Okay. No, I haven't. But I just want to join this one first. I want to see if I can just join the one without doing it. I think you can do that. And then actually, there's many ways to do this. You can set up all the control plane nodes first, or you can get your join and stuff working, get your CNI in there, and then you can go back and add the two other control plane nodes, which I'm going to do next. I'm thinking about setting up the automation steps for those. Does that make sense? This is kind of an Ansible thing. So I don't know if that makes sense to do that, but that's the plan. Kubernetes get nodes. Okay, get nodes. Okay, get nodes. Cube. It's not going to do it because it doesn't have my admin stuff. I'm going to have to config the. Yeah. Maybe root already has it. Nope. Export kube config. This is the thing you're not supposed to do later. Let's see. Kubernetes admin.conf. Did I get that right? God damn it. Get nodes. There we go. No resource type nodes. Complete SO. I'm just doing a get nodes. I don't have the CNI yet, so I can't do API stuff. Is that right? I know it says the control plane. I know I am, but I wanted to see if it was possible from here. And it's not. I assume because it doesn't have a CNI thing. I'm trying to figure out what communications are allowed without a CNI and what are. That's what I'm kind of trying to establish here. And it turns out that most of the kubectl stuff is not going to work because the CNI is missing. Unless, or it's because we can't get to the configuration file. It's container configuration. Go to control. Let me actually find the right file first. I want to make sure this is actually wrong. Oh, this is kubelet.conf. Yeah, this doesn't even have the admin stuff in it. I'd have to. You don't need CNI now. I know you guys have said that before. So, but see here, look, I have on this system. I've already exported the kubeconfig, the admin thing. I know I'm not on control node. I know export kube, but I am trying to test how much connectivity I have. I'm doing this on purpose. I know it doesn't make any sense right now, but I'm doing this on purpose because I want to test how much connectivity I have without a CNI. And because it was a revelation to me that you can even join a kubelet node. I know it's authorization for two different things. And get nodes is, I think, doesn't pass the I'm guessing it doesn't pass the stuff. You know what I mean? It could be that it can't even talk because the CNI's not there. I don't know the networking model by heart, but I have a feeling that there's two different network layers here. There's the one that coordinates communication between the kubelets and stuff that has nothing to do with CNI, and then there's the internal container stuff where the pods talking to each other and having a deployment that's got 5 pods in it, talking to all those different pods and everything, and that is the CNI. That's my thought, and I'm just validating that that's true. If you have a kube config on it working, it will work fine. Great, that's what I want to know. I know you should not do this. I don't care. I want to see if it can be done. So, because it'll validate my understanding of the networking. So sorry, verbose, to see what is failing. Yeah, I have V8. I didn't know about that, Heg. Thank you for that. So kubectl get nodes. Yep, it works. Okay, so what have I confirmed? I know this seems like a roundabout way of doing it, but I've confirmed that networking between nodes / kubelets really actually works without CNI. That's true or false? It seems to me component networking does not equal container networking. Exactly. And I want to make sure that I fully comprehend what that means and what specific tasks in kubectl or other things would be affected by it. The reason that the instructions said to go to a control plane is because they would never tell you, go copy your admin conf off here down to an endpoint and then use that temporarily to do this, because it's easier to do it on the control plane anyway. Because it's already on an API server, it doesn't have to do any inter-node networking at all. So I personally just wanted to see if that is possible, and this helps me understand better the networking policies and stuff, or the networking architecture. So the networking in Kubernetes is one of the most complicated pieces of the entire thing. And, we spent a good 6 hours just understanding load balancers, which, at the end of the day are not that complicated, but there's many different implementations and they all deal with, low-level networking things like, the ARP versus BGP. And these are conversations that the average Kubernetes person wouldn't understand. You have to have them in a network level. And so that's why I'm doing this. I know it seems silly. I'm not following the instructions, but that's why. So this means that, reminded, I'll say, that CNI is only for container networking, not node networking. To me, that means something, and that's all. To me, that really means something, and because I was surprised that you could do the join thing without. I mean, it does say container network interface, right? It's not your overall cluster. It's just so that your containers have a networking module. So that I assume applies directly to the container runtime engine and nothing more, period. So, all right. I mean, I'm doing get nodes. I could probably do get pods even. Yep. Look at that. Oh, my temp shell's finally doing container creating. You remember it was stuck before? This is my what was it? I forgot the name. This is that. What's that container? I forget the name of it. I can't remember it now. It's actually container created. It's not stuck anymore, but it still doesn't have a network because it's a container and it doesn't have a container network. So now we need to do the CNI to get that thing to work, depending on what order we want to do this. Yeah, it's because it can't talk to the network. We already saw this last night. It has no IP because it's a container. So that needs a CNI. It can't create a container because it can't netshoot. Yeah, thank you. It's netshoot, and it can't get the netshoot container because it can't talk to the internet because the containers have no networking policy because they don't have a CNI. So, and this is actually reminding me of last year when we did this, which was the same thing. I mean, I was able to, remotely talk to them, everything, but none of my pods were doing anything. What events is generating? Yeah, let's do that. So, describe. Oh boy. What's the pod? Temp shell? Oh, that's right. It's a pod. So it's got a, I was like, that's not a pod name. It totally is. Describe temp shell. Yeah. Doesn't have research steps. Describe pod temp shell. Is it pod describe? There we go. So enter SECNI.d. That don't need once you install CNI. Really? Ooh, that's a great tip, LBG. So it doesn't like mess you up. I'm gonna write that in my log. I'm just putting everything in here because reasons. Okay. If you run reset and a reminder to clean up that directory. Really? Really? Very nice. Y'all are very helpful. Oh boy. I have failed here. If you run a CNI pods, should remain in pending status. Yeah. Well, this is one that we actually tried to do a run pod without having a CNI or anything. We didn't even have a node that was joined to the network. We were just trying to run it in the kubelet engine, in the runtime engine on the control plane, just to see what's possible. And it wasn't. So it's interesting. It got scheduled. Had untolerated taint preemption. One nodes are available. One preemption is not useful. You know what it is? It didn't run it on the control plane. I forgot about that. That's why it's running now, because there's a node. By default, control planes have taints on them automatically, so the stuff doesn't get scheduled on them. That's good to see. Yeah. I know this because I'm doing the daemon set for node feature discovery, and you have to explicitly, which I just did last week, you have to explicitly say, no, I want this stuff on the control planes. And there's a taints and tolerations a toleration I think you have to add that will allow it to run on a control plane. Otherwise, it doesn't have anywhere to run. And that's what this was going on. That's what's going on. So now it's scheduled, but it just can't, now it can't see anything. This is file directory. There's no result.conf. What the hell? This is interesting. I understand static pods more or less now, yeah. Yeah. I believe I do. So failed create pod sandbox. Yeah, there's a couple of things about static pods that didn't come clear until I played with them. So, okay, it's a pod that's running on the kubelet on the system. Fine. Kubelet has to be running. You can't have a static pod running. Even if the image is running, the kubelet has to be running to access a static pod. That was a revelation. Because the container is there. But it doesn't qualify as a pod unless it has a kubelet running associated with it, even if that kubelet is crash looping until kubeadm init gets run. That was a little annoying to learn. The second thing was, everybody was saying, oh yeah, static pods can have no access to the API. That's bullshit. They absolutely do have access to the API if and only if they're running on a control plane that has an API server running on it. So several people told me incorrectly that static pods do not have access to the API, to the Kubernetes API. That is bullshit. They absolutely do have access to the API. And most of the time when you have a static pod, most of the time when you do have a static pod, you are dealing with the kubelet. It's getting proxy through the kubelet, or you're talking directly to the scheduler or whatever, because it's on the same thing. So all of the core control plane components are static pods, and they are accessing the Kubernetes API all the time because the API pod is running on the same kubelet instance. So the statement that static pods don't have access to the API is mostly wrong. Number one, because when you're going to see a static pod, it's almost always going to be something related to the infrastructure or to cubes in the kube-system namespace. And almost always the stuff in the kube-system namespace is going to have access to the API. But if for some reason you wanted to make, the API server is static stuff. If for some reason you wanted to make a static pod, which you probably shouldn't, I mean, there seems to be overwhelming consensus on this. If you wanted to make a static pod instead of a daemon set or something like that, and deploy that in the wild, using your own namespace or some shit like that, the default may be no access, right? So that I'm bringing that up because that was confusing, because for whatever reason, I thought that static pods had no access to the API, mostly because that's what I read. So the static pods do have to be managed by changing files on the nodes, which makes me really curious how Cedero or Talos does any of this, because I mean, I imagine it's just not changeable. It does all the access itself through the API, the MTLS plus protobuf. That's how you talk to Talos, and the only way that you talk to Talos. No SSHing in and setting up manifests or some shit like that. You can't do that. Which is another reason, by the way, you might not want to go with an ephemeral OS. Kind of like they have a read-only OS like Talos. It's really cool, and I actually really like it. I want to try it, but I can see a million reasons that I wouldn't want to do it. Because Kubernetes is still largely this collection of completely different things that may or may not need configuration. The static pod comes to mind. You cannot manage and run and install a static pod on Talos because you can't get onto the system. And you can't deal with a static pod unless you're on the system and you can set up manifest files for the kubelet. Period. So, I can see some reasons that I might not be, you also can't read log files and stuff like that from, I think they've provided pods and applications to do that, but validate docs, trust your observations, match them with what people say. No shit. That's pretty much the RWX way of going about things. And, if I could, rant less, we'd be more effective. A lot of my restating is me teaching myself. It might be really annoying for everybody listening to me, but this is me solidifying the things that I'm learning as I go, because these are really important things to understand. So anyway, the static pods are like if for no other reason than the security concerns. So, okay, next. So, and kube-vip is deployed as a static pod. So, I guess we're good with that. And then what do we have? We have, it's not talking because we don't have a CNI. I'm trying to decide whether I have one kubelet and I have one node and I have one control plane, and I'm trying to decide if I just want to go through and finish the whole thing with the CNI on this one, and then I'll expand my network, my Kubernetes cluster, and build it out by doing another one by hand, and then potentially one set using Ansible. So I know it's kind of a time-consuming thing to do, but that's kind of my plan. So let's do that. We've got one. This is actually working. It's not doing anything because at this point the errors that we see is it can't. This is funny. This is an interesting error though. Run systemd resolve the conf, no such file or directory. This makes me think that there is a default networking thing, and I think the LBG was talking about this, This makes me think that it's actually trying to do some sort of networking, and it's failing. It's failing. So it says successfully defined default scheduler successfully assigned default temp shell to mini 1. So that's what put the pod on mini 1, and then it put it down there. Failed to create pod sandbox. Open resolve.conf, no such file. So CNI netd, I have a feeling that there's something in the default non-CNI stuff that tries to look for local resolve.confs and stuff like that. And I want to go Spelunk. I'm going to go Spelunking. I'm going to go look for this because I think that's kind of interesting. Etsy, CNI, and net.d. So, there we go. So, the 100creobridge.conf. Subnet 124. So, this must be the default stuff, right? Creo bridge. Huh. Loopback. CNI version. Type loopback. Which this means that the default configuration. You know what's interesting? I'm just curious what. This is complete curiosity here, but see this right here? See, this stuff doesn't exist, right? I mean, where's the 10.network coming from? I mean, is that what it's doing? Huh. What I want to know, the files the Creo comes with, yeah. I just for giggles and grins, I kind of want to mess with the resolve conf. I mean, I used to use resolve all the time. Is it still the same? Yeah. So service IPs though are owned by Kubernetes. Huh. Etsy CNI net.d. I mean, if I were to provide a resolve.conf, would it, you know, until you sell CNI? Yeah, there we go. See, it's trying to find the name server locally. It doesn't have it. And that's because it's trying. The reason for that is because it's trying to go out and get. It's trying to go out and get IPs for the container runtime stuff to download it. Yeah, and it can't find it. It can't resolve the network. I have a feeling though that I can actually fix this. If I were to put, name server. I mean, I don't suggest doing this. I'm just super curious. Oh God, I just broke it. Yeah. Ubuntu using local DNS. Yeah. kubeadm assumes that you're using system resolved. Yes. kubeadm does, but not the pod. I mean, not this, right? Where's their describe again? Where was I? Was I doing that? Here we go. Does it look like you are? Systemd resolve.d. No, I'm using hosts. Yeah. I'm definitely using hosts. That's a good thing to know. And tell Google your local topology, of course. Why not? Look, I know I'm using 888 on temporarily. I don't want to set up an internal DNS. Yeah. Container CNI is empty, so nodes don't run pods at all. So it doesn't run pods at all. Well, this is why the reason I'm doing this. So, let's use systemd resolve kind of stuff. Here's kube, let's use systemd resolve these stuff. It configures kubelet to do that. Not the host, but the kubelet itself, right? All right, that makes sense. All right, so let's proceed. That was just a kind of a curiosity. So we do need to remember to go clean that stuff up, which I think I put in my log, right? So we do need to go back and remember to clean that up. Everything under CNI etcd. All right, so next, let's install our Calico CNI, which we debated on long and hard and decided to use it because it has eBPF support. So that is what we will do. I can actually, it's funny because I can actually install the CNI from here now because I set up, even though I'm on Anton, because I can do get pods and stuff from here. Yeah, which is kind of funny. So I can actually install the CNI remotely because CNI is a resource as I understand it. So let's go to that step. We'll come back to the join stuff for everything else. Check resolve conf and run the kubelet config. Oh, yeah. Let's do that really quick. Let's do that. I want to do that. var lib kubelet config YAML. Anonymous authentication mail 509. It's a Kubernetes PKI served. Interesting. So that's the one we're going to have to replace with our own eventually. If we're going to do our external, so it does create the certs as I said, but if we want to do our own, we're going to need to pull those out and manage our own PKI from scratch. And I want to do that eventually. I don't know how to do it right now, but I'm going to do it. C group driver, systemd, which we checked already. Cluster DNS. Yeah. Health checks. And resolve the conf. There it is. Run systemd resolve the conf. So it is looking for the systemd resolve the conf. That's good. Even though the pod is not, right? The netshoot pod. The netshoot pod's using something completely different. I have a feeling if we deploy the netshoot pod again, it would be different. It would use different things, but it doesn't have CNI. So it's not worth doing until we have the CNI installed. All right, so let's go back to how to install the CNI. We'll come back to the joining stuff too. We have other stuff to do. You must deploy a container network-based pod network add-on so that your pods can communicate with each other. Cluster DNS will not start up before a network is installed. Take care that your pod network must not overlap with any of your host networks. You're likely to see problems if there is overlap. You're not running systemd networkd. No, the error was looking in a different place. I think the error is coming from the netshoot thing itself, actually. I mean, unless it mounts it. I think the netshoot is, I don't know. We'd have to go check. Wait. Oh wait, we don't have that. Or they use every private CDR range? Really? That's not good. I don't know what my range is going to be. So, 100? Why? Because it was just so weird? Take care that your pod network must not overlap in any other networks. You're likely to see problems if there is any overlap. If you find a collision between your network plugin's preferred pod network and some of your host networks, carrier networks, interesting. CG net range. you should think of a suitable CDR slider block to use instead. Pod network slider. But doesn't it use a default that's pretty reasonable? What is the default range, slider range? What plugins YAML? I guess it depends on your plugin. I mean, okay, so 172 is the default used by, that's the default used by Docker. So, yeah. Kate says no default, but Docker is pretty much 172, right? So, yeah. I'm tempted to use the 172 network. Take care that your pod network must not overlap any of the host networks. I don't. Check the Calico docs, yes. Docker does analyze your network and uses it not. It does, absolutely. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, it does. It looks for the thing that's not being used. Yep. Calico docs. Set up Calico. Init command? No, I did not. I did not. Nope. So, kubeadm init as a replacement to your network plugins YAML. I remember we got hung up on this last year too. Yeah. Last year you had to make sure that this is one of the things you did. It's just Calico. Yeah. We talked about Calico versus Cilium. We're both using. We're not doing anything. We're using eBPF Calico. Live on Linux Master. I don't know if I go that far. I mean, I'm okay, but so does anybody ever really master Linux? I mean, really? So, yeah. Losing an evening over it. Yeah, we did the whole pod slider thing. So this is, okay, if in the book that I write, or that we write, the number one thing I want to make people know before they start running kubeadm init, so they don't go, oh shit, is they have to have their load balancer done. They have to know what CNI they're going to use. They have to know what slider network they're going to use. If they're going to set up certificate authorities, I think because we have to do _CA, right? There's a bunch of arguments that we also don't have that have to point to the certificates, so that we can use our own certificates. So the kubeadm init command is actually pretty damn involved for an on-prem thing where you have stuff all over the place. Yeah. So yeah. Yes. So I have to tear down my network already. I have to tear down my cluster because I need to make sure I get my pod slider right based on Calico. And I asked that question. I said, how much of the CNI do I have to get configured before I do my kubeadm init? And after it says here, make sure you're running init, blah, blah, blah. Oh, hey, sorry, psych, you forgot to do pod network. Roll back what I just told you because my documentation fucking sucks. And go back here and remember that thing that I told you to do? We were wrong. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. This documentation is a fucking disaster. It should be under a cluster slider. By links to Btrfs. Oh God, no. We don't do Btrfs here. Have fun with that. So I don't anyway. Pod networks. Yeah, I know what the command is now. I'm not done. To initialize the control plane, run this. Okay? It's like, but know what your args are. And so any rational person would read the thing that says know what your args are, and they would read immediately above for any possible args that you might be missing. API server addressing, I mean, they gave you all the optional things, right? And then pod network slider. Okay, so there it is. It says you set up your pod network slider, and we didn't do that. So that's on me. That's on me. It says it right there. Choose a pod network add-on and verify it requires any arguments passed to kubeadm init, which is exactly what I just said it didn't say to do. but it does say to do it. So that's user error. That's user error. I can't tell you how many times I've read these things. It says you might need to set the pod network CIDR. It's fun being the straw man that everybody gets to shoot holes into. Aren't you glad you can learn from all of my mistakes and be completely roasted by all of these know-it-alls? Because now you don't have to be. I will lay myself down as a martyr to the cause because I suck. You can learn from all of my horrible examples. Yeah, I know. Apparently shit did just happen. Doesn't care. Kubernetes does not care. No, it does not care. You did all these mistakes in the past? Well, okay. So, this wants to know the IP actually assigned. Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is, actually. I don't know. And I have to go to Calico. It's like, I don't know. Quick start for Kubernetes and Calico from Tigera. Anyway. Ask me something about low-level authentication using tokens and clusters and all of that stuff, because I wrote a pretty complex klogin command that manages kubeconfig, but I don't know about pod CIDRs. Why? How many times do you get to install a Kubernetes cluster in your life as a Kubernetes admin? You should be able to do it a lot. I don't. In 2 years, I've never done it. I mean, I did it once last year in VMs that were not big enough. So the lesson here is you should be able to install and take down clusters all the time. And you can't practice that unless you have a lab or a cloud. And even in the cloud, they're going to do all this shit for you, so you can't practice it. Clubster. Yeah. Ensure Calico can manage Kali and tunnel interfaces. Yes. I'd love me a good CIDR. Me too. IPAM, Calico, CNI, Calico. The geeky details on what you get. Calico, you get a CNI routing, Kubernetes data store. Create a single host Kubernetes cluster. Following the Kubernetes instructions, install kubeadm. Did that. After installing kubeadm, do not power down or restart the host. Instead, continue directly to the next step. As a regular user with sudo pro is open a terminal on the host that you just installed. You can Kubernetes on and initialize the master using the following command. Are you telling me it uses .zeros? I already allocated that. Note, if you don't like it, use something else. You reinstall, you can just edit the controller manager manifest. I want to do that. I want to do that instead of doing it, but I want to know how to do it right. So let's read about it. So note, if this is already in use, it is. You must select a different pod network, CIDR replacing in the above. It doesn't say which one. I don't know what to use. I allocated this. I'm not rethinking. This is all shit I wish I'd known before I went into this. Because when I was setting up my internal network and I picked 192 and everybody says, oh, 172 is used by Docker and 10 dots used by VPNs, and you have conflicts there. And everybody was like giving suggestions on how to do network topologies so you have the least amount of potential conflicts. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. I didn't even know about RFC 1918. I didn't even know about it until this exact moment. Because you guys are so smart. And neither did like 90% of the people watching this. So I guess what Lab sent to us, case sent to us, no. So Calico's default, so yeah, probably need to readdress. Yeah. Well, thank God it's not that big of a deal. If two or more organizations follow the address allocation specified in the document, they can wish to establish IP connectivity with each other, and there's a risk that address uniqueness will be violated. To minimize the risk, it's strongly recommended that an organization using private IP addresses choose randomly from the reserved pool of private IP addresses when allocating sub-blocks for its internal allocation. That's what I did. But that's not this. Are you saying instead of using this to do like a 17 or an 18? Because that almost would work, except for the default. Yeah. Yeah. In this case, I'm actually thinking that pick a small random subset. But to me, that would be the implication from that is to not use the whole fucking range. But then you have to know how to subnet. Tanis did a really great subnetting thing last week. So, but according to this documentation, if you're using Calico, they're going to use this big ass range, which you probably need. I mean, let's be real. This is going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of things in it. So I'm kind of better with a bigger range here. Because the number of addresses needed by Kubernetes internally, if you're running a lot of applications, is monstrously huge. So I tend to want to keep this. Here's the CNI being created. This is installation. I tend to want to keep this recommendation. So I am going to amend my host allocation, my internal IP stuff. I'm glad I didn't use DNS for this. So up to this moment, I have been using the .0 network for virtual machines. So, I have Kali, which is a stupid ass conflict. I don't need that. I can just take that down, actually. Yeah, I can just turn this off. And it's funny because I just hard coded that. 24. So I run VLAN a third octet. And give the whole pool 254. I can expect the octet to be needed by the. Oh, I wouldn't do that. That's far too few, in my opinion. To me, that's far too few. Because the CNI stuff's going to do all of the pod stuff, all the container networking as well. I mean, there's going to be way more than 100 or several hundred. Unless I'm missing something. I mean, So, power, suspend. I can expand VLAN tag if I need more. Okay, well, I don't think I'm going to use VLANs here. I understand that people do and why they do, but I think I'm probably not going to do that. More systems for the close-up program. What the hell? My fan is going on. That's a bad sign. My fan is on. That's a bad sign. Last time I did that, I got in the CPU loop and I lost my Anton stuff. Yeah. So, change a read-only file. Okay, let's not do that. Let's do cd into hosts. WASM. Wonderness. Is that the network thing? There's there's an application that you can do. Wow, that's super pretty. Yeah. Is that some Rust awesomeness? What is Anton? Anton is the name of my VM running in Windows. Yep, and it's kind of. I mean, it predates my cluster itself over there, my rack, my stuff. It's a reference to Silicon Valley. So, web VM, virtual machine, and networking via Tailscale. What are you talking about? Linux virtualization and WebAssembly with full networking with Tailscale. Oh, shit. That looks really cool. Yeah, WASM is going to open up all kinds of things. Yeah. So, all right. So where are we? So I am changing my network topology. See, these are all things that would have been nice to know before I did the setup of my network. And, I am frustrated, but not angry. Because how the fuck are you going to know this? Most people are not going to know this. They're going to go through and they're going to say, so the document that needs to be written is all the decisions that need to be made in order before you do an IT deployment or a Homelab deployment. These are the decisions you have to have solidified in order. Are you going to use your own PKI? Are you going to do your own DNS? Are you going to do internal or external etcd? Are you going to do a load balancer? Are you going to have a physical load balancer? Are you going to do what kind of network topology you're going to have? What CNI are you going to use? Because the CNIs might default to different CIDRs, which you can change, yes, but it's nice to have those things taken care of before you get there. And, you know, in this particular case, it was covered by the docs, but it's not completely apparent how the order of stuff to do. Now to address the kube cluster. Yeah, because it's not that big a deal. I created, so first of all, I made a decision tonight, but we had a long fight about that. How long did we talk about the difference between, how long did we talk about the difference? Oh yeah, we're definitely doing skill stack. I know, some break is needed. I'm just going to jump right in. I already had a break. I had lunch and everything. We talked extensively about whether to use static versus reserved DHCP in a Homelab, and whether enterprises. And there's a number of people who talked about. I'm just recapping what we did with the network. We had a huge conversation about network organization back when I was doing OpenSense. And in fact, somebody told me about OpenSense at the time, and I ended up putting that in my environment before I kept going because I was re-networking everything. At one point, I was going to put everything on the 192 network, which is just fucking idiotic. It was absolutely idiotic. There's no possible way I could have done that. So, but now I know that, right? So I put this up. If I had to do it over again, I would have subnetted a little bit better. Right now, it's just 192.168/16. And I just said, I'm glad I went with static IPs. Honestly, I'm really glad I went with static IPs at this point. So, and I made Anton is this machine. I made it one of the static IPs, and I put it in this range. And it really doesn't have to be this IP. I can put it as any IP, actually. Yeah. I could go change that. I wanted the .0s to be my VMs. And, I mean, I have any number of things here. I mean, I could put the VMs on 6.6. How about that? That might be fun. Or I could put my Kubernetes. I could put my Kubernetes cluster on 6.6. Should we do that? We could do that. That would save me work. What if we did that instead? So we're working with the 10 network as well and 192. I'm not using the 10 network at all. No, because it's got too many conflicts with other stuff. I could do that. All the VPN stuff is on 10 network. So try hack movie, hack the box. It's all 10 network. I thought about using the 172 network actually, which is, you know, you're talking about the /12 one, yeah? 172.168, no, whatever, .32, 172.32/12, I think. Right, we talked about that's a class B. Where is min0? Triggered by odd numbers of things. Well, I'm counting like a human here instead of non-human. And you'll always pick the wrong one eventually. I know I do. Yeah, 172.16.0. Yeah, that network someone has told me is the internal network used by Docker. That is smart enough to sense it. But since we're not using Docker, we're using Creo, we could probably get away with that. IP space in Linux, I do too. Yeah, I am inclined to use the 172 network for my pod network. What I don't understand about this, though, is the level of conflict potentially with the internal networking within. I mean, I know the CNI is supposed to be networking for the containers, right? But the container runtime engines have their own networking in addition to that it defaults to, right? And so if you're running Docker, for example, it detects whether you're on something, but you end up usually using 172 networking, right? And so that was actually one of the reasons not to do that. And it's on networking space. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about container or pod. They're different, right? In fact, one of the distinguishing features of a pod is it has its own network address. The entire pod does. The container runtime uses CNI to manage IPs. It does? Okay, so that is super important. If that's true, then I can pick a potential conflicting IP range like 172 and be okay. In fact, it would argue that I use that range because that's the range used by other things. Other like Docker, for example. Docker has chosen to use not overusing subnet ranges. Anyway, so container run uses CNI to manage IPs. So because the container runtime uses CNI to manage IPs, going with 172.16/12 for CIDR, for CNI CIDR. And the reason I'm doing this, since Docker frequently uses that. Same reasons. I feel like the 172 network is probably the best one because, the 10 dot's going to be chewed up by VPN stuff. The 192 is usually, at least the .1 is already spoken for. And each group has a net namespace. And each task is inside it, unlike default Docker, where each container has its own net namespace. Yeah. Fast IP addresses can run out even in home network. I know. Especially if you don't subnet right, This is actually one of the reasons that I stayed away from the 172. You'll remember that I completely deployed my network using 172. Yeah. And then someone told me I was really dumb. 192.168.1/8 is only 254, right? No, I'm not using IPv6. Are you fucking kidding me? You obviously weren't here for all the IPv6 local LAN problems I had, where we had to run strace and deep dive into what the fuck was going on. No way. I won't let IPv6 on my local LAN ever again after that. No way. You go back and watch the videos. We spent like 2 days trying to figure out why OpenSense was fucked. And it was actually because of IPv6 specifically. It was timing out on requests and packets were making it back and working routed properly. And we looked for all different kinds of configuration settings in the OpenSense thing. And then later, like a .4 point release came out, which addressed WAN problems. And we still to this day don't know if that would have fixed the problem because we switched back to IPv4. And I was using DHCP reserved addresses at the time, which were handing out, IPv6 addresses. So I had to disable IPv6 explicitly in my OpenSense router. And I will never go back. I will never go back. And then we had a bunch of people say, why the hell are you using IPv6 on local LAN of any kind, business or otherwise? You shouldn't do that. You should use IPv4 only. And there was quite a heated debate about whether it was ready for it or not. And I've decided I will never, ever deploy, including my imaginary organization, IPv6 internally ever again. There's just too many. I mean, you'd have to really have a huge organization to even touch that kind of problem. Home network, OpenBSD as the main router. Nice. I'd have to eventually learn IPv6. Dude, we were low level debugging. We were tracing packets and syscalls and stuff. And it was a complete mystery. It's all documented. I wrote it all down. There's a whole video of it. I captured all the output from strace and I got rid of it all. I went to IPv4 and everything just worked. Just worked without a problem. And we were trying to blame something. We were trying to find out what piece of the infrastructure changed. It screwed everything up. We could not find anything. It was whatever it was doing. It was happening outside, upstream from my OpenSense router. It was happening at my ISP level or someplace out there, and it wasn't routing the v6 stuff right properly, as far as we know. And so it was either that or it was getting blocked by some NAT rule that we weren't aware of on OpenSense. That's not the default, which is very possible because they did have a bug fix shortly after that. What time is it? We're going to get ready for the boost here, yeah? tools are definitely way less mature. Yeah, they are. I all of a sudden I couldn't do any research. I couldn't ping anything. I couldn't I found out because I was doing all my really fast command line searches and stuff, and they were all hanging. I mean, they'd eventually come through, but it would take like 5 minutes. And then when we S-traced it, we saw that the AF underscore net 6 requests, which are IPv6, were the ones that kept, like every fucking millisecond they were going through, they were just like spinning, and all of a sudden they would eventually time out and it would fail over to IPv4 and the thing would go through. And I was like, okay, I'm done here. So, I wanted IPv6 to work. That's why I enabled it when I tried it. I'm like, oh, surely OpenSense is smart enough to know all of this stuff. Nope. At least not without, other customization besides, the easy to follow along steps that you click on and stuff. Which, by the way, Network Chuck does without talking about any of that shit. You just click here, click here, click here. It's like, nope, that's not going to work. Sorry. It's such an oversimplification of what actually is real. So, anyway, it's never that easy, my friends. That's the job. The job is complicated. 2 IP addresses, but I currently can't because I'm in the last mile is held by the same IPs where oh my god. Does not solve the problem? Oh, it definitely solves the problem. It absolutely solves the problem. It might not solve your problem. It solves the problem for me because I'm not using software that doesn't speak IPv6. So, as long as IPv6 doesn't work on my network, I'm not using it. The end. Problem solved. Problem solved. Yeah, IPv6 is for public internet. If you want to use it for there, fine. And I do. My router is designed to use IPv6 once it leaves the house. But internally, everything is IPv4. Okay, so let's go ahead and zpomo stop that. I know there's a lot of people who want to use IPv6 and have it be like good, but it's not. The protocol is sound. The protocol is totally sound. I mean, how many times has that been the truth, though? Right? Some of us have to work in reality. We don't work in what should be awesome. It's like, it doesn't matter how well-defined Wayland is. I'm never fucking using it. Not in its current state. There's another example of that. So, whatever. I'm not having to use that with IPv6. I think that would be awesome. Yeah. I think that would be really awesome. If you get that to work, let me know. Specifically with the OpenSense router. Which is probably your best bet of getting it to work because OpenSense is something you can control. It's way better than your shitty, Netgear interface. It's like hasn't had an update forever. Or software. So, by the way, this problem existed on pfSense and OpenSense. On IPv6, no, I do not. I definitely do not. I think it should be learned, though. It's just not something I care about. I want my Kubernetes cluster to work the end. I want my network to work. I don't want to wake up and have all my stuff stop working. Even if it is user error. So, well, did you read all the problems with the... Somebody during that whole conversation said that the CIS hardening guide specifically says do not use IPv6 because it's insecure. And it checks to see that you are using it. There's an audit checkpoint in the CIS hardening audit trail. We have the PDF. I put it out there. It says do not use it. It turns out it's not as direct as saying don't use it. It says make sure you do it properly. But the tool that they use checks to see if you're using it. If so, you don't pass. So 2 minutes to boost. Yeah, we're going to play with boost. We're going to do boosty stuff now. All right to the YouTubers out there who are watching this crazy stuff. I am now going to be doing the beginner boost, so I'm going to stop the YouTube video for now. Ready, stop.